I'd like to call May 12th City Council meeting to order and ask that everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Zito, roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli,
Here.
Councilmember Clarici,
Here.
Vice Mayor Patton,
Here.
Councilmember Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Here.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if we could we move item 6.1, the ceremonial matters, up to in front of the announcements of 3.1 and 3.2?
It's fine with me. How about the rest of the council?
Makes sense.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
At this time, then, I'll call for ceremonial matters. A proclamation recognizing Dennis Look for his service to the city. And at this time, I'm going to read the proclamation, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Look to please come up to the podium. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville commending Dennis Look on his dedication to the City of Placerville. Whereas for many years, Dennis Look has unselfishly volunteered for countless beautification projects for the City of Placerville, and whereas Dennis has worked in all phases of the landscape industry throughout El Dorado County, and his expertise in design, development, and maintenance of residential and commercial landscapes has been invaluable as a volunteer to the City of Placerville, and whereas Dennis has, over the years, focused his volunteer efforts on key entryway projects within the city, knowing that well-planned and maintained landscapes enhance the image of our historic city. And whereas prior to the Highway 50 operational improvement project that connected Placerville Drive to Lower Main Street, Dennis created the gateway to the Sierra project on a triangular piece of property west of Canal Street. The totally volunteer project incorporated El Dorado High School students, the Placerville Rotary Club, and the Community Pride Committee, and Dennis solicited donations of materials, plants, trees, and labor in its construction. And whereas Dennis has been instrumental in the Placerville Downtown Association's Flower Baskets on Main Street annual project and has actively engaged more workshop clients in every step of the process, from the creation of the baskets to watering and caring for the baskets. And whereas examples of Dennis's downtown landscaping projects, both public and private, include Buttercup Pantry, the Fox parking lot, the Bell Tower, the Placerville Aquatic Center entrance, and many other small public gardens in our community. Now therefore I, Patty Borelli, Mayor of the City of Placerville, do hereby commend Dennis Look for his many years of outstanding volunteer contributions to the Placerville community and wish him well on his retirement.
Thank you. Proclamation and a microphone, that's a dangerous combination for me. I could tell you lots of stories, but the one that I will tell you is basically the first involvement that I was with Ron Mueller was with the Bay Laurel trees downtown, and part of them were starting to fail, and we're trying to figure out what to do and how to shape them. This was 1982. I had been here 2 years. I was a retired mountain guide, and I was shoveling llama manure when I came into town. And knowing Ron from the old days, basically he said, can you help give me some advice on the canopy and what we can do with it, because it's going into the awnings and trucks are hitting them. Well, I was very naive politically about small towns, so I made a suggestion about that, and 2 days later, basically, no lollipop trees will exist downtown. So from that, it was a lesson learned. This is a great town. Beautification has always been something that vibrancy, flowers, make the asphalt, make the character of this town look even better. And it's unfortunate with the drought situation, but we are being good partners with the state and with the governor and all of that. But I love this town. It's a great town. But for me right now, I'm just going to slow down and think about maybe doing nothing. And for me, that's not even possible. So I thank you very much for this recognition, and I'll see you all around. I just won't be moving at the pace that you normally saw me at.
Dennis, before you leave, I think someone else in the audience would like to come forward.
Do I have to stand here?
It is so hard to describe Dennis and all that he's done in so many ways. He's taken a lot of flack just being downtown on Main Street. Probably everybody that went through town stopped and complained to Dennis about something that was wrong. But he's made so many contributions over 33 years. And
Would you introduce who you
oh,
are?
I'm sorry, Kathy Lishman, Placerville. When Ron got him to look at the trees downtown, that discussion of trees has never ended yet. But Dennis has given so much valuable input on trees and plant lists. His is a labor of love, and you can see it everywhere that he worked and everywhere that he volunteered, and that's the reason that he did it. And he worked quietly behind the scenes on so many ways, never wanting recognition, and that's one of the things that I admire so much about him, is that it was really out of love for the city and just happy. He was happy when he saw things get done and when he saw things happen, and that was his only reward. And his love of the city has really helped us improve the grace and charm of Placerville. Because he loved the city, his parents took an interest in the city too, and his dad, who was a member of the State Park and Recreation Commission, in his own quiet, behind-the-scenes way, was able to get funding for the trail for us, which is a monumental thing. I know John has worked really hard at getting funding on the trail and the overcross up on 50 farther in years past, and it is really a big challenge. When we started Community Pride in 1990, Dennis and Carol Patton were a couple of the first volunteers. I actually went back and found some minutes in 1992 that had Dennis's name as attending a meeting. And over the years, he's attended meetings and then he hasn't attended meetings, but he's always been there to help. He's been a mentor, a teacher, a cheerleader, a coach, an inspiration, and one of the hardest workers I know, and I do have a hard time believing that he is going to slow down. He helped develop the Gateway to the Sierra theme for the town, and a lot of the gardens have granite rocks in them, and the trees reflect that. And then he's always added color to make it beautiful, and it is too bad that now we're not adding any flowers because of the drought. So the work that Dennis has done isn't showing as well now as it has in the past. And he's also participated in the Monument Garden, helping to develop the plan for that we hope to get funding for someday. As Josette Johnson said to me, his involvement with volunteers in the city enabled us to keep the gardens alive during drought, flood, vandalism, loss, theft, equipment failure, sun, wind, rain, snow, hail. You name it, it happened. And it was Dennis who was always there for us in the gardens. And I have a couple of gifts for Dennis from Community Pride. You're going to get your own Community Pride apron with a tool that I'm sure you will find handy. And one more. This from Community Pride is a Community Spirit Award, presented to Dennis Look for your efforts in improving the grace and charm of Placerville, with a lot of pictures of some of the gardens that he
Oh,
has
that's a
helped.
great idea. Thank you so much. Would anyone else care to come forward?
Good evening. I'm Lisa Crummett with the Placerville Downtown Association. I don't come bearing gifts or proclamations, but I did want to say thank you very much to Dennis. He and Carol Patton and Bill Robinson and several other downtown merchants were part of the original Flower Power Committee that passionately worked hard to get flower baskets on Main Street, which we did, and in the years that we were able to do those, they looked great. We're hoping that we'll be able to use, with the help of the city, reclaimed water, if we can get permitting from the state of California to redirect some of that reclaimed water from the water treatment plant out of the creek and into the flower baskets. And so we're not saying goodbye to Dennis, because he told me he would still work for us. But I do want to thank him very much on behalf of Placerville Downtown Association for beautifying Main Street and all of Placerville. So thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ron Mueller, Placerville. I just want to say that Dennis really has been a tremendous person to work with. His attitude, willing to do anything, can do anything, does do it all. You don't find many people like that. I had a question of him, though. I was wondering how he'd respond, because most of us who retire, we go home to landscape. I wonder what a landscaper does when he goes home. Got a bottle of wine, Dennis, or what? Anyway, the other, so many beautiful projects that have really and truly made a difference in this community.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. Would you tell everybody just who doesn't know what your affiliation with Dennis?
Well, Dennis and I worked together. I was the Parks and Recreation Director for the city, and
Right. For many, many
Dennis
years.
came upon the city, and it was the best thing that really ever happened to this community as far as I was concerned. And the other unique thing Dennis has done, he doesn't realize it, but with all of his beautiful landscape accents in this community, you know, those who retire, he'll never be forgotten, because I drive by so many spots in this town, and I see them, and I think of Dennis, and I always will. But thank you, Dennis, so much.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else? Okay, at this time I'll bring it back to council, and I think Carol would like to say a few words.
I just can't believe that Dennis Lick is actually going to retire. But I didn't know him in 1982. I met him in the late 80s in the other drought, when we had a bunch of landscapers, renegades probably, got together to tell EID to not have a moratorium on landscaping, and instead we drafted some rules that EID could live with. And so instead of the rule that said no new landscaping, they said drought-tolerant landscaping only. And that's when I met Dennis. And I have to agree with Ron Mueller when he said anything Dennis put his mind to, he could do, and he was willing to do, until the reason he stopped going to Community Pride was because he didn't want to fill out all the government disclosure stuff. No, he said, forget it, I'm not going to do that, I'll just be a volunteer. So that's what he does. He does things without any need for recognition. And we have a standing joke between us of how many times we've had our pictures taken on the front page of the newspaper from our rear end perspective. Because when you're digging in the dirt, that's what you're doing. You're bending over, and inevitably that's what got on the front page. But I remember when we did the bell tower garden, the first bell tower, one of the first adopt-a-spot gardens, we put these little Norway spruces, I think they were, Dennis, little pyramid Christmas trees, if you will. And the first thing that happened, well, not the first thing, but probably years later, we get complaints that no one can see So rather than just take them out and take them home or do a myriad of things that Dennis could have done with them, he took them out and he put them in other gardens. Like Ron said, everywhere you go, the trees now, they were in the Round Table Pizza parking lot gardens the last time I saw them. So, and then the garden at the Aquatic Center, I don't know how many of you have ever really looked at it. It is a work of art. The man is so talented in the choices that he makes and then in the care that he provides for them. He's one of the few that I know that actually convinced this town to spray pre-emergent on our roads so the weeds, so we didn't have to spend time and money on weeding all the cracks in our roads. And I thought, gosh, how novel is that? but he does these things without any grandeur. He just, it's, oh, by the way, Ron, how about if we do this? Or, oh, by the way, Steve, how about if we do this? And he never looked for any kind of awards. When we were working with the More Workshop clients, we were actually helping them to plant the flower baskets. And, you know, Dennis is a perfectionist. And so for him to work with disabled adults and try to teach them how to unpack a six-pack of flowers, plant them in a basket, and then water them correctly was a testament to his patience, for one thing. But they survived, and to see the thrill on the clients of More Workshop, to see the thrill on their faces is something I will never, ever, ever, ever forget. And I know that it was difficult. There was a lot of things about that project that were very difficult for Dennis, but he's the one that said, he and I together convinced Mike Tomei that if you're going to have flower baskets downtown, you have to water them. And that's the challenge we face today. At one time we had talked, and I'm going to point out Rebecca here, because at one time we talked about having watering, little drip tubing up whenever we do a road project on Main Street, get watering tubing to the flower baskets at the lampposts. But, you know, that's kind of, I don't know if that's come and gone, but it was always in the back of our minds. We didn't have it written down in a plan, but I am surely going to miss Dennis Look and all that he has given to me over the years, his friendship and his sharp shears. And he just, the man, I got a complaint. Someone called me. I had a shop downtown for a while right by the bell tower, and someone called me and said, "Can't you get that guy to stop using his blower?" I'm like, really? He's cleaning up your town. He's cleaning up your town. But anyways, I really appreciate all that he's done, and he will leave a mark that I don't know that anyone can fill. So thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, well, I think Ron said it best, that there is no way that we'll ever be able to forget all that he's done, because all you have to do is go down the street and see all the products of his work. So thank you again, Dennis. Okay, at this time, I'm going to bring it back to announcements and presentations to the public. So it'll be 3.1, presentation by Dan Bolster.
Good evening, Mayor Borelli, council members. I'm Dan Bolster with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and on behalf of the commission, I'd like to thank the City Council for the opportunity to present the Sacramento-Placerville Transportation Corridor Alternatives Analysis, the elements of our draft study, to you this evening. And just a little background information on the study. In August 2013, Caltrans awarded the El Dorado County Transportation Commission a $210,000 partnership planning grant to fund the study. And the purpose of the SPTC alternatives analysis is to analyze the costs, benefits, constraints, and opportunities of providing a transportation and recreation corridor between essentially Placerville and downtown Folsom. It's 31 miles long. And the public has owned the SPTC corridor since 1996. But for almost 20 years, this large and what I'm going to call a linear regional park has gone basically unused compared to its potential that it has. And I think it's time to move forward and start realizing the significant benefits that this corridor has. It's time for the city of Placerville to realize the tremendous economic benefits of having people come from the American River Parkway up here and have a cup of coffee at Centro, dinner at Bricks, breakfast at Sweetie Pies as they ride on up the rest of the way up the bike trail into Apple Hill. And I'll tell you, I don't think we have to wait another 20 years to start doing that. Last year, the city of Coachella Valley down in Southern California has a very similar corridor, and they were successful with a $10 million active transportation program grant. And I think with our talented group of grant writers at EDCTC, partnering with the city of Folsom, Jim Kanaka, grant writers down there, that we could go after and be successful with a very similar grant, then we could build as much as 20 miles of this trail within the next 5 years. So it's our hope that the information we provide by the SPTC alternatives analysis can help the city of Placerville, El Dorado County, and the Sacramento region take those steps forward. And with that, I'd like to introduce Adrian Engel. He's our project manager with the Echelon Transportation Group, and he's going to walk you through tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So what we're talking about is the Sacramento-Placerville Transportation Corridor, which extends all the way from the city of Sacramento to the city of Placerville. The lower 17 miles, which is shown in blue on the map, it actually represents where the gold line for regional transit is now, so light rail from the city of Sacramento to the city of Folsom. The remainder portion of the SPTC corridor travels through the city of Folsom, the south area, just south of Folsom, that's being developed now, that's in Sacramento County, and then a majority of the corridors in El Dorado County from the county line to Missouri Flat, where the El Dorado Trail, the paved portion, then picks up and goes into Placerville. So the goal of the project is to give public officials and community members the technical analysis needed to make informed decisions about prioritizing funding and implementing improvements to the SPTC that will provide the public with the greatest benefit. So I understand this corridor exists in the first place because of the rail that was created there in the mid-1800s, and was really one of the elements that helped found this region. And so that active rail line has been used for years to haul freight in and out of the mountains between minerals, timber, the agriculture, and is really an important piece of what it means to be part of El Dorado County. And I think that message and the history of that corridor needs to remain, but there's many different ways that can be done. There are many different volunteers that have been working over the years to maintain the corridor for the last 20 years since it was bought through the Rails to Trails Act. This is pictures of some of the railroad volunteers from the El Dorado Western and Placerville Sacramento Valley Railroad that have been maintaining the track, the ties, the bridges, as well as working in historic downtown Folsom on their rail park down there as well. There's also a number of volunteers that have been working on the trail development. So the Friends of the El Dorado Trail and many other volunteers have been developing a single track trail for the entire 30 miles. So it's currently possible to travel from Missouri Flat all the way to Folsom on a mountain bike or on foot along the entire corridor. It's a great place to be. So in the study, we're looking at 8 different modes of transportation. Because the corridor was purchased through the Rails to Trails Act, there is the potential of it being reinstated as a freight rail line, and that is part of the congressional mandate from the Rails to Trails Act. But talking to UP and other short line operators, the chances of that happening are very slim, unless the economy of El Dorado County would change significantly, where it would make economic sense to reinstate freight rail back into the corridor. It was also discussed at some point to extend light rail further up into El Dorado County. If that were to ever happen, it wouldn't happen on the SPTC corridor and would most likely follow Highway 50 where the population centers are. And so really what we're looking for this corridor is the other 6 modes listed there: the excursion train, road cycling, mountain biking, equestrian uses, hiking, and then pedestrian uses such as walking and jogging. We analyzed, as part of the study, we analyzed the characteristics of the corridor in terms of demographics and land use. We analyzed half-mile, 1 mile, 1.5 mile buffers around the corridor to understand how many homes and businesses would be impacted positively and potentially negatively from the uses along the corridor. And what we found is a majority of both the businesses and the homes are concentrated around the city of Folsom, the city of Shingle Spring, or the town of Shingle Springs and El Dorado and into Diamond Springs as well. There's a large portion near Latrobe that is relatively underdeveloped. By 2035, in the next 20 years, we should see about 35,000 homes along the corridor. These people would have the easiest access to use the trail on a daily basis. They would also be the most impacted from some of the trail users in terms of trespassing, litter, or rail noise if there was an operating train on the corridor as well. Also, there's about 50,000 job opportunities along the corridor as well. So there is a small chance that some of the households and jobs could be utilizing the corridor for commuting modes. More than likely, though, those are the businesses that are along the corridor that would benefit from the economic development, such as the train riders or the bike riders buying food, bike shops, those types of things that could benefit from being next to the corridor. There is no true methodology for analyzing what the demand would be of this type of facility, unlike roadways where you can use traffic models to look at land use patterns 20 years out and sort of model how many users would be. So we had to look at a number of different case studies throughout the nation. The Rails to Trails Conservancy is one of my partners on this, and we were able to utilize a lot of their data to look at other case studies that have been done for trail or rail to trail conversions or rails with trail projects to sort of see what kind of demand and what kind of economic benefit is sort of seen from these types of studies. So there were 3 studies in the Northeast that really had the funding to be able to do studies over time to both look at how many people were actually utilizing the trail and how many, and then what kind of spending habits they had when they were coming on and off the trail. And with that data, the one that really stood out to us was the Heritage Rail Trail in York County, Pennsylvania. It had a similar length to the SPTC and a similar demographic characteristic near a large city, but still in a rural area. They had about 280,000 users on the corridor annually in the trail. They also started an excursion train in the last year that saw 30,000 riders in the first 6 months. It sees an annual economic benefit of about $7.7 million in spending in the community related to the trail and rail uses on the corridor. And so it is one of those economic engines that they're starting to leverage as part of amenity in their community. Here's a picture of the trail itself showing the multi-uses that are currently operating on the trail, and then a picture of their heritage steam engine that they run. It's said that Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address on this particular train, and his coffin is also carried back for burial on the same route. So again, they tie into their historic cultural assets in their excursion train, and I think El Dorado County and the city of Placerville has that same opportunity to tie into the gold country history. So what was the demand for this particular transportation corridor in the future if we were to develop out with a full excursion train and a full Class 1 multi-use trail? We're seeing about 800,000 users potentially on this trail and about 50,000 riders on an excursion train for an annual benefit of about $13 million. So it could have a substantial economic benefit. Some of the characteristics of the SPTC that I think would benefit its use is its year-round weather, versus in Pennsylvania where they're snowed out for part of the year. You could ride a train or ride your bike on this particular corridor all year long. Its connections to the American River Parkway, its historic assets, and then finally some of its scenic vistas. There's some beautiful places along that corridor that you can't experience anywhere else in the Sacramento region. So currently, the El Dorado Western Railroad and the Placerville Sacramento Valley Railroad are running excursion trains using speeder cars or motor cars, which are these smaller engines that don't require the same level of regulation as a FRA Class 1 larger train that they're working towards. But currently with these vehicles, they're able to get people along the corridor, both out of Shingle Springs, El Dorado, or the city of Folsom, to really experience what the potential of the corridor could be. The PSVRR has run their Howard No. 8 diesel engine this last year during their Rail Fest for the first time and plan to start putting it into operation on a very small portion of the corridor in Sacramento County. You can sort of see what they're aspiring to in terms of what the excursion train could look like coming up the SPTC corridor. Also, if you go out there any nice weekend, there's lots of hikers and bikers out there today. So the trail is a great place to ride. There are places where the trail combines with the rail and you have to ride between the tracks or right next to the tracks. But in many places, the trail is separated from those rails, and it's a very nice place to be. In terms of cost estimating, I had to look to see what the cost of improving that corridor to have a Class 1 bike path similar to other portions of the El Dorado Trail. I looked at 3 different conditions, the first being a path next to the rail in unconstrained terrain. This would be towards the west end of the corridor where it's relatively open and flat and relatively easy to put in a multi-use trail. I also looked at conditions closer to Diamond Springs, El Dorado, and other locations where the terrain really constrained the development of the corridor. You'd have some higher unit cost for that and some more difficulty developing a parallel path. And then finally looked at what it would cost to remove the rails and replace the trail onto the rail bed itself. There's currently a policy in place by the JPA not to remove any rails along the corridor. So that policy would have to change if you were to build a trail on the rail bed itself. So beyond the trail itself, there are 12 different bridges along the corridor and 34 roadway crossings. So I looked at the feasibility of what the upgrades would be needed at all of those locations to accommodate both rail crossings and trail crossings. There's 3 locations along the corridor that are going to be tough to get through. The first is the Southeast Connector, the expansion of White Walk Road. So whether there's a rail or a trail going through there, a grade separation is going to be needed at some point to be able to have that separation of conflicts. Also, the Deer Creek Bridge near Latrobe will be a relatively expensive structure to build a parallel trail structure towards. So that'll be something that'll have to be looked at in more depth. And then finally, there's a few places like the tunnel cut near the Red Hawk Casino, where there's rock walls on both sides of the corridor that are going to be a little bit tough to get multimodal access through there. So those, again, will have to be looked in more detail moving forward. So as far as comparing the costs, to be able to build an FRA Class 1 excursion rail along the entire 30 miles, it's about an $8 million investment. For building a paved path, to build it completely off the rail bed the entire length is about $45 million. And if you were to build that on the rail bed and remove the rail, it's about $18 million. I also have some comparative costs on there for if you were to do a gravel path instead of a paved path. And you get about an $8 million premium to pave it. So beyond looking at the facility itself, I really wanted to look at the users, because really the goal of this is try to accommodate as many different users on the corridor as possible. And so the existing condition right now accommodates the motor cars, mountain bikes, a limited amount of equestrian uses. There are some challenges with the bridges and some spots that don't have enough clearance for horses, as well as the hikers. Currently, the FRA Class 1 trains, larger diesel trains, can't run on a majority of the corridor. And road cyclists have a really hard time on the single track trail, as well as pedestrians of all ages and abilities really have a tough time on the corridor. It's not ADA compliant, and it's a little bit more rugged, kind of a hike. And so currently right now there's about 9,000 rail users predicted on the corridor for this year, which has an economic benefit of about $150,000 to the region. Most of their maintenance and upgrade costs are being done on an as-needed basis by volunteers and donations through the railroads. In addition, there is a number of trail users out there today. I've estimated about 10,000, but I don't really have a good way to count that number. But an equivalent economic benefit of about $150,000 for those 10,000 mountain bikers, hikers, and equestrians that are out there today in terms of economic development. The second scenario looks at upgrading the entire rail bed to FRA Class 1. So you could run those larger diesel engines to get more people on those trains to get them up and see more of the country. So in this case, you'd still have that single track trail next to the rail bed. You'd have to upgrade some of the bridges to be able to accommodate a parallel facility, because when you run the FRA Class 1 trains, you have to have that separation between users. But from the rail itself, I could see a potential demand of 50,000 rail riders in the future, which has about an $8 million cost for that upgrade, with $1 million economic benefit for that type of excursion train. As the trail is separated from the tracks, you could potentially see another 50,000 trail users coming out of that, with an equivalent $700,000 annual benefit to the region. There is about $5 million of improvements needed, though, to be able to get that separation between the rail and the natural trail. The payback period for this particular scenario is about 10 years. So it'll take you 10 years to recoup your investment based on the economic benefit. The third scenario looks at leaving the FRA Class 1 rail in place, which is the first column is the same, but adding a paved path, a shared use, multi-use paved path instead of that single track natural trail. At a cost of about $45 million to have that separate facility. Again, I was estimating about 800,000 visitors and local users would utilize that trail with an economic benefit of about $12 million for the region by having that many cyclists, walkers, and different types of trail users throughout the corridor that way. This particular scenario has about a 4.5-year payback period. The last scenario that I wanted to talk about, again, requires a policy change to remove the rail, but if you could, and you were able to build the paved path on top of the rail bed, similar to the other parts of the El Dorado Trail, you'd be able to accommodate all of your users by keeping your single track trail in place. So your horses and your mountain bikers would still have that fun factor and separation from the fast bicycles. And your users of all abilities and ages could use that paved path on the rail bed. Again, a cost of about $18.5 million for this scenario with, again, about 800,000 users and $12 million of annual benefit. And so in terms of next steps, these scenarios would not be applied for the entire corridor over the 30 miles, but some combination of these scenarios would be used over time as different business plans and projects were brought forward for improvements. But I really wanted to inform all of the different electeds throughout the region on the different choices that are being made and what the ramifications of the choices would be in terms of economic benefits for the region, as well as regional costs that would be incurred.
Thank you very much. Would anyone on the council, do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
I just really appreciate the information again. Certainly enjoyed seeing you at the Transportation Commission, but really appreciate you letting everyone in Placerville know what our options and our opportunities are coming forward with this important project. So.
Thank you.
Carol?
I have a question. You talked about the White Rock Road corridor. So since that's already it's being built, has there been a grade separation design for the crossing of the corridor?
There is an engineer currently working for the Southeast Corridor JPA that is working on those designs right now, and they're looking at different alternatives for those grade separations and what the cost ramifications would be to the Southeast Connector.
So it might be part of the project moving forward?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to come forward with any comments or questions?
Kirk Smith, Placerville. This is a great project and it deserves our strong support. It just has a fantastic experience for being able to provide recreational needs and economic benefits. But one of the problems is, in order to get the heritage trail that you saw, that would be absolutely wonderful here, where you have trains going along the side and you have bike and walkers able to go side by side, is money, big money. What I heard earlier today was that it's roughly 2.5 times more to get all the train tracks used, because you have to remove, some say, the train tracks in order to have a path go on it. Because if you have the path go separate, it's a lot more expensive. So if you want a heritage trail like that, it's going to need your creative efforts to look for money. And it would be really wonderful to do. Imagine like the train that you have on Sonoma that goes to the wine country. Imagine, wouldn't it be great to have a train where you get on it in Folsom and go all the way to Apple Hill during the fall? But a lot of those tracks have been removed. So if you remove the tracks that exist now, you'll never be able to bring them back. And that opportunity to have the Heritage Trail that you saw up there that's so successful in Pennsylvania will be gone forever. And that train is just as important to the gold rush in the early days of Placerville in this county as that train that carried Lincoln. And that's why I'd urge you to get really behind this, because it's going to need your creative efforts to create something that like the Heritage Trail.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor Borelli, council members. Jim Harville, president of Placerville and Sacramento Valley Railroad. We are a volunteer-driven 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we have been providing excursions to the public now for going on 5 years. In our first 4 seasons of operation, we've served over 20,000 individuals, and that's not uses, as in a lot of the trails figures. If you're out there 365 days a year, that's 365 uses, but that's nearly 20,000 individual users, ranging from school field trips to special charters for assisted living communities and everything in between. In your seal, a unique historical past forging into a golden future. I see in this study the seeds of that golden future. There was a lot of trepidation in the rail community when this study was being proposed, and in the early portions, or in the early stages of this study. The more I see of what the overall study is going to show, the more excited I become. This is what you've seen today, is that high altitude overview, and of course it loses a lot of the detail and nuance and some of the possibilities that are out there. As a nonprofit, we leverage that ridership dollar 7 to 10 to 1 compared to a public works project. So when Adrian brings that number forward, that to bring the entire corridor up to Class 1 status would be about $8 million. Again, over a 20-year project, because nobody's going to come up with $18 million or $45 million overnight. This is going to be a long project. We just recently paved the last 3/4 of a mile down to Ray Lawyer Drive here in town. So keeping that in mind, but what that represents is our ability to do that work in a very professional fashion for pennies on the dollar, which makes the whole project very, very viable, and we're very excited about that. I want to thank the study team for putting this information together. It will serve as a supplement to the 2003 Corridor Master Plan that El Dorado County adopted, and it will be grist for a lot of dynamic conversations over the next year or two, but I'm very confident that those compromises will be achievable to benefit the maximum number of users. I do want to point out that I do want to point out that Folsom has more than 35 miles of Class 1 trail in their community, much of it alongside the railroad. They've been committed, as are the other members of the Joint Powers Authority, committed to a Rails with Trails vision, as is your El Dorado County Parks and Recreation Commission, who has never cast a negative vote against our program. They see the value of protecting our culture and history while we expand our recreational opportunities. Again, I want to thank you for the time today for my comments. And once the final draft of this study is published, we will be coming back before you at your pleasure and giving you an overview of what we see, how we see the future unfolding on this wonderful, wonderful asset that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to you and your group for all the work you've done so far. Thank you.
Jackie No. Good evening, City Council. As you know, we have this wonderful Class 1 trail in town, and we've heard it in the neighborhood chats and everyone how valuable this is to our community. What I don't think we've really realized is the economic impacts and potential that everyone's seeing all the way across the country. These little mining towns are being revived across the country with the rails to trails conversions. And that's the potential we have for Placerville. Down the hill, as Mr. Harville mentioned, Folsom has 35 miles, a network of trails, and that's connected to the American River Parkway that goes 31 miles to Sacramento. And from West Sacramento, there's 8 miles that connects to Davis that has 55 miles, and that's really what we need to tap into to bring those economic benefits back up the hill. So the Class 1 being built is really essential to our economy. the connectivity and benefits for anyone really needs to be a focus for Placerville and the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Anyone else care to come forward and comment on this item? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council. And thank everyone, and looking forward to see the continuation and the outcome of this. Thank you. Okay, now we have an EID water conservation presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. There's been several comments about the drought, and tonight we have EID's Director of Engineering, Brian Mueller, to update the council on EID's water supplies as well as conservation efforts being made right now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian Mueller.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mary Borelli and council members. I also want to introduce, we have our EID board president, Mr. Bill George, in the audience too, so he's available for any questions. So unfortunately, after 4 straight dry years, or critically dry years, I'm back again. I was here last year talking about drought status.
I remember you.
You remember, yes.
I'm sorry you had to come back and do this again, too.
I know, we all are. So I just wanted to come here to just talk about first just a few slides on the status of our water supplies and our conservation efforts, and everybody's seen the news about the governor's declaration, and there's some regulations that have been mandated for EID and our customers that I want to just go over as well. So first, the good news, we have been in a drought stage for over a year now. For EID customers, last year we achieved about a 24% conservation district-wide. That includes City of Placerville customers as well. That's compared to 2013 usage. So that level of conservation really led a lot of the area around here, including the Sacramento area, which is good news. We remain in a stage 2 water warning for our main system. We also have a small water system in the Outingdale area, serves over 100 customers. Unfortunately, the state curtailed our ability to draw water from the Middle Fork of the Cosumnes River just recently, so we've had to truck water to those residents. Just started during the last few weeks. We had to do that last year because the river ran dry. This year, there's still water in the river, but because of the state board's curtailment, we have to truck water. We can't pull any of that water out. On April 1st, the governor issued an executive order that required a statewide 25% water conservation. And what that meant for EID, first the State Water Board had to implement that executive order. What they did to do that is tried to divvy out all the water suppliers in California based on a tiered system, and that was based on the per capita usage of each water supplier. And I've got a table that shows that. But what it means for EID customers is we need to conserve a little bit more than we did last year, up to 28% conservation. Fortunately for the city of Placerville, and I think Dave might talk a little bit about this, there is an exception for retail suppliers that serve less than 3,000 connections, where that would default to a 25% conservation. So the city of Placerville has an ability to just get to the 25% conservation and not the 28. So as I mentioned, just real quickly on the status of our water supplies, the city of Placerville receives water from both Jenkinson Lake, Sly Park Reservoir, as well as the American River, South Fork of the American River. So this is a chart that we show our board pretty much every meeting on just the status of the storage at Jenkinson Lake. And you can see that the yellow line is how the reservoir has been tracking this year. And it's matching pretty closely with how it performed last year. It's below average. The blue area under that curve is the average storage for this time of year, but you can see in May we're a little bit less than 85% of capacity. One of the benefits, though, and we have a really cool feature in our system, that we have the ability to import water into Jenkinson Lake from the South Fork of the American River through our canal system. It's called the Hazel Creek Tunnel. So we've been doing that at a pretty brisk pace. I think for this year we're actually importing over 7,000 acre-feet of water into Jenkinson Lake, and that acts as more of a storage bank that gets us by and really helps in drought years like this. The other sources of water for the city of Placerville, we call Project 184. These are 4 storage reservoirs: Silver Lake, Caples, Lake Aloha, and Echo Lake. This just really shows our forecast of how these reservoirs are filling and will empty as the season goes along. And just the point here I wanted to make is that just with really the lack of snow this year, this winter, none of these reservoirs are predicted to fill up to the top, which they usually do in normal years. And so we're really starting on the downward decline there. The good news, though, is that from a consumptive standpoint, we're able to draw from these reservoirs and still meet our consumptive deliveries. And that was really in jeopardy for a while. On the conservation progress, we also, this kind of stuff is on our website as well if anyone's interested. We track the level of conservation for our customers on a weekly basis. And the purple line, is tough to see the colors on this slide, but the purple line shows the weekly conservation. For this year, for 2015, we're at about 20% conservation level district-wide. So obviously we need to do a little bit better to get to that 28% conservation for the year. This is the tiered system that I referred to earlier, and how the state board, with their new regulations, apportioned the different tiers for the different water suppliers. You can see for EID, based on our residential per capita usage, we were placed in the 7th tier, which is the 28% conservation. There are other agencies in the Sacramento area that are at this 36% conservation tier. A lot of the lower conservation standards, 8%, 12s, those are really more on the coastal communities that have lower per capita usage, and that's been a really bone of contention with a lot of us here is how the state board determined these tiers, and it really affected areas like this with predominantly dry weather and hot summers are being asked to conserve more than Bay Area type of communities. So we have a drought action plan, and we've been constantly making some revisions to that, and so the main thing I want to talk about here is just the revisions we made and the requirements that we are placing on our customers based on the state board's regulations. So of course the 28% conservation goal is there, but also the next few bullets are new prohibitions that are now mandated for our customers. The first one is prohibition on irrigation of ornamental turf in public medians with potable water. Also prohibit outside irrigation for newly constructed homes, unless those are watered with a drip system or a microspray system. This is really something that the county and perhaps the city, if there's any new homes being built, that we'll have to keep track of and enforce as far as irrigation of ornamental turf. Also prohibit use of potable water to wash sidewalks, driveways. The intent here is to stop people from just washing off their driveways or any impervious surface just to get rid of the dirt when you can use a broom instead. So that's a new regulation that's mandated. Also using hoses when you're washing your cars. You need to use a shut-off nozzle, not just let the water run down the driveway. Also on the irrigation outdoor irrigation, if we do have any rain, hopefully we do, but if there is any rain that you're not to irrigate outside during or within 48 hours of that rain event. And then on the restaurant side and the hotels, motels, the final 2 bullets, restaurants are prohibited from serving water unless it's upon request. We have some type of tent cards that are available that any restaurants in the area we can offer those as well, that indicate that water will be only served upon request. And then for any hotels or motels, they must offer guests the option not to have their linens and towels washed daily. So those were the pretty much the complete set of regulations that were adopted by the state board recently, and so we're passing those along to our customers. Some of the other requirements that our board considered and adopted just yesterday doesn't really affect the city of Placerville. It has to do with recycled water system. This is mainly in El Dorado Hills. We won't get into a whole lot of detail here, but we have to supplement the recycled water system with potable water during the summertime. And so we are going to suspend that activity this year because of the drought in an effort to conserve more water. And then also to prohibit the filling or refilling of any ponds or lakes, any other non-irrigation type of water feature with district supplied potable water, that practice will cease. So that is just kind of a brief summary of where the district is at, and we're hoping, you know, as the season goes along, we actually have to monitor the conservation on a monthly basis, report that to the state board on a monthly basis. So we really need our customers to heed these type of regulations. Otherwise, the state may be coming back to the district and you know, and asking us, well, what are you doing about it? You know, to get to that 28%. So, any questions for me?
Thank you, Brian. Any questions or comments from the council? Wendy?
Thanks for coming for us again, Brian. Appreciate it. So my question is if our residents follow the state board regulations, is the prediction that we will meet the 28% reduction, or are there other things that our citizens should be doing?
My opinion that really the best avenue to get to that reduction is the outdoor irrigation use, and with the you know, the landscape irrigation. We have watering days in effect. This, you know, the city may consider you know, different watering days. I don't know what the conservation levels have been in the past. Maybe Dave can answer that more. But
If I may, yeah. Thank you, Brian. Brian mentioned the state regulations that were just adopted, and because the city of Placerville has less than 3,000 connections, we have to meet one of two requirements. One is to reduce our consumption by 25% compared to the 2013 level, or go to 2-day watering per week, or 2 days a week watering. And in speaking with Mr. Morris and Mr. Driscoll, we feel it would be more achievable to go to 2-day a week watering. Currently, that's where we're at. Last year, this time, actually in April of 2014, the council adopted a resolution adopting EID's watering restrictions, which included 1-day, 2-day, and 3-day watering. Currently, EID is at 2 days. They're going to go to every other day beginning June 1st. So there may be a little confusion if we went to 2-day watering from April to November, because from June to September, EID will be at every other day. But we would like to issue a notice to the ratepayers with our May bill that advertises that the 2-day watering would continue from now on through November. And that way we're meeting the state's regulations, as well as we would bring a resolution to the council at your next meeting ratifying that action, if you will. And I'd be happy to receive any comments or concerns regarding that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that means if we do the 2-day a week, we don't have to be concerned whether or not we hit the 25%?
You don't have to commit to saving 25%. If we say, we would basically have to commit to saving 25%, which we encourage. Currently, you're encouraging people to save 30% on a voluntary basis. The governor has required every Californian to conserve 25%. And then there's the tiers that Brian spoke about, depending on past usage. But by adopting the 2-day watering, that would be your commitment. And as long as we're enforcing the 2-day watering, we're okay.
As a
which
city.
we're planning on doing.
Thank you.
And how did we do last time in meeting that? I mean, I think you have all the figures that.
Keep in mind the conservation efforts began around February, and it was on a voluntary basis. Our conservation for the city of Placerville alone was approximately 14%.
Okay.
Compared to the 2013 level.
Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to see if anyone from the audience would like to come forward with questions or comments.
Carl Hagan, City of Placerville, an EID customer as well as a City of Placerville customer. I would personally prefer that we had the same odd even days as EID at both of my properties. I'd just as soon not be different at one section of the city, and people, I mean, obviously people get a water bill, they know they have city water, but I get a sewer bill from the city and I get a water bill from EID at my commercial building. And I personally would like to have the every other day watering, if that's what EID is going to do, to be the same for the city. It's just to make it simple. I'm a simple kind of guy. Just keep it easy, keep it simple. Don't try to do something different than EID. I know we've got to pass a regulation or pass a resolution, but I don't think I think that can be brought before the city and it'd be corrected easy. And I think combining the two together at the same time with our advertising in the Mountain Democrat, or at least notice in the Mountain Democrat, so it's not different than EID. Just a thought.
Thank you, Carl. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Bill George, EID Board President, and also contains the City of Placerville in my division. To Carl's comments, I agree and I disagree, I guess. We are going to be looking at that watering schedule over the next couple of meetings as to whether we change it or not ourselves. We modified that. We kind of jumped the gun, I think, in my opinion, last 2 meetings ago when before the governor made his pronouncement, and we adopted an every other day watering schedule at the recommendation of one of our board members, who happens to be a landscaping contractor, that it was easier to set timers and what have you every other day rather than 3 days a week, 1 week, and it only amounted to an extra day a week every 2 weeks of watering. But given the new requirements by both the state board and the governor, particularly the state board, which I'm not going to address because I'll get angry, but I'm very upset with when the state board violates their own policy in implementing regulations. It kind of bothers me. So I really recommend that you probably go to the 2-day, because if I have my way, we're going to do that too. But again, I'm only one board member, so I can't really say how that's going to be. And I know there's going to be confusion, but there's going to be confusion anyhow. So I think the best thing is to bite the bullet and try to conserve as much as we can. We're lucky here in the county, as Brian indicated. We're probably in better shape than most people in the state. And the main reason we are is because we control 95% of our water rights. We own Sly Park. We bought that 11, 12 years ago. People complained, why are you spending all that money? If the Bureau of Reclamation still owned that reservoir, they could tell us that we had to take all the water that we have stored in there, put it in the Consumptives River for the fish. So we're really in good shape. So anyhow, I don't want to ramble on, but I would recommend that either you maybe hold off for a couple of weeks until we make up our mind, but because it would be simpler if EID region-wide or county-wide and the city were on the same schedule. But that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Mickey Kaiserman, a resident of Placerville. I have a question for the EID. With the reduction of water usage, that means generally that we'll have less revenue received by EID. And I've been reading in the paper that possibly there'll be a drought water surcharge added. Is that a possibility with these reductions?
Mickey, I'll get an answer for you in just 1 second. Okay, thank you. Not just a minute. We'll see if there's anybody else has questions for you, and then we'll.
Quickly, if we were doing a straw poll, this is Chris Payne from 327 Main Street, Placerville. I would go along with the 2 days a week because of the conservation nature the ability to save as much water as we can. And I think the gesture of having a system which obviously considers that is better than the ease of whether or not you know which particular day. That's something we'll just need to work out. And because of your needs to get the information out with your mailing, you might consider that tonight to be very important, to make sure that you aren't spending more money being able to get the information out than you already have systematically ready to go. So you might have to make a decision tonight. I don't know, Mr. Warren can kind of speak to that question about timing, but I thought I would bring it up. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. George, I'll ask you to come back and give an answer to the...
Thank you, Mayor. Bill George again, President, El Dorado Irrigation District Board of Directors. There is no plans at the moment for a drought surcharge. However, we do have that ability to do that if that should come to be necessary. But one of the things that we're doing, and I know there's probably a lot of controversy about it, is that we have recently acquired additional water rights from the Project 184. That's the canal system from the American River that we're taking well, the only place we can take it at the moment is Folsom Reservoir. We recently got a 5-year warrant contract for, I know it's kind of crazy, we have a water right for 17,000 acre feet in Folsom Reservoir, but we have to get a contract with the Bureau to take that water, even though it's our own water, because of the fact that it's a federal reservoir. But we did get a contract, a 5-year contract for 8,500 acre feet, and because of the fact that we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the pumping capacity, we don't have the water treatment capacity at El Dorado Hills, and that's the only place we can take it, and obviously we can't afford to pump it up the hill, we have negotiated a contract with Westlands Water District to sell water, a certain amount of water to them. The amount is still to be determined, but at the rate of $700 an acre foot, which is about double what they were getting last year. So that will help to supplement the non-rate revenue that we depend on from our power plant primarily, but the power plant has been putting out less power this year because of the drought and because of a failure of a tunnel on our system, the Esmeralda Tunnel, that you've read about in Mount Democrat. So at the present time, there's nothing on the horizon that I'm aware of to implement a drought surcharge. That could come in the future, but I personally don't expect it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
From the council? No. But
thank you.
We might have someone come forward yet, so. Dave, did you want to answer Chris's comment?
And I appreciate the comments. Mr. Payne's right, timing is critical, and I apologize, tonight's item is not an action item. The state literally adopted these regulations on the 5th of this month, and so, and then the information regarding the adoption of these regulations was put on the website shortly thereafter. But our May utility bill is going out this week, and it's for a 2-month period, so the next utility bill will be in July.
2 months, yeah.
Right, and so currently, if you go to every other day, that's going to start June 1st, which is in the middle of the billing period.
Correct.
So if you change it, there's going to be a lot of confusion because you'll have 2 messages. One is every other day, another one is if you went to 2 days a week through November. And so what we'd like to do is go ahead and issue a notice saying that the 2 days is going to continue from now on through November. And then bring a resolution to you ratifying that at the next meeting. You could change that, and we could issue another notice if you wanted to. So I don't know if Mr. Morris had any comments or.
I think I'm going to ask real quick, can't we do an emergency action item? I mean, isn't there, if we needed to? You thought it was necessary?
May I confer with you?
Yes, you may.
Madam Mayor, after conferring with the city manager, I don't think we have the factual basis that would be required to put this on as an urgency.
Okay, but we can do what Mr. Warren suggested,
Let-
that,
Let me tell you what, Dave and I talked about this today, and I'll let you know. I directed him to go ahead and put that out for the 2 days a week watering in the utility bill. If you look at the whole picture, it does not make a lot of sense to go the other route and require the 25% reduction, because there are some fairly severe penalties for not achieving that goal. And looking at what we did last year at 14%, an additional 11% is quite a lot that we would have to do. So without asking, because of the timing of all this and needing to get it in the utility bill, that saves us some money and be able to do it that way. I told Dave, let's go ahead and do it. We'll take that risk and bring it back to the council to ratify so that we're in good shape to do it at your next meeting.
I'm thinking what it amounts to is that probably the majority of the people would concur with that and go along with it, but we wouldn't have the legal clout if somebody decided to until we do the resolution
at the next meeting. But the key is, even without that, until you've done the resolution, you're on 2 days a week right now. Anyway,
I'm on I've been on 2 days.
Right. Well, until June 15th, that is when, under the current plan, we wouldn't change to 3 days a week until June 15th.
Okay.
So either way, we're in
okay.
good shape on the 2 days a week.
Right. It would only be an emergency if we were changing it.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Anyone else from the audience want to come forward?
Good evening, Mark Acuna, City of Placerville. There's been so much discussion in the media that everybody is focused on percentages. We've got to save this percentage, and obviously the higher, the more the dread. I just wanted to clarify for everybody if what Mr. Warren is suggesting this evening or recommending is that if we adopt 2 day a week outdoor watering, that will be our only criteria. We will not be under any other percentage or anything of that nature. Just because every other community seems to be so percentage focused.
That is correct.
That's confusing because I don't want us to use 50%. Right. You know, I kind of don't understand that part of it.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
When you compare residents in the city of Placerville to, smaller lots, typically smaller homes, on average compared to, say, El Dorado
Could
Hills.
you talk a little bit louder?
El Dorado Hills,
there.
Cameron Park.
There you go.
There are a lot of folks that are using very little water already. And
Correct.
so it's very difficult for folks to reduce. Now, there are those that are using quite a bit that can serve more. It's just everybody needs to do their part. I guess my point is I think it's going to be very challenging for several residents in Placerville to conserve a full 25% compared to the 2013 level.
Well, I tend to agree with that because I think when we had to do our sewer project and people started conserving way back then, and everybody was doing their best to keep their rates lower, et cetera, most of us did start then, and it is hard to, how can we do any more? So it's going to be very difficult for a lot of folks. I agree. Okay, anyone else care to come forward? Comments? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the council. Any more comments? Questions? Cleve.
I just want to mention quickly, I don't want to give the impression that, we're just on this 2 days a week now, so it doesn't matter how much we use.
I know, that's what I want.
We do still want to monitor that closely, and we will be educating and watching, especially for the water wasters and et cetera that are letting it run down the streets and gutter. We will monitor that closely, and we're working on plans to work with our employees to report that and et cetera. And we already have had some people that have reported misuses, and we've sent warnings and cautions out to those people when those have come in. So we do want to do our part and help EID in achieving their 28% that they need to get to. So we will be monitoring that and working with homeowners and businesses, et cetera, to do what we can. So.
Okay, thank you.
Did we issue ourselves a warning for the geyser on Main Street? Just asking. Okay.
No more geysers. Okay, next item, closed session. We had no closed session. Adoption of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This next item is public comment, brief, non-agenda items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the City Council under specified circumstances. The mayor reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please give any written material presented at the meeting to the city clerk for public record. Okay, at this time, do we have any written communication?
The mayor and council, the only thing we have tonight is a letter that was submitted in relating to item 12.1 that you can consider as part of that agenda item. From,
okay.
Letter received from Sue Taylor regarding that item.
What about, we have a letter from, oh, no, there was the lady on Lotus, Sylvia, I can't. Judith Davis.
Is that the one related to the, yes, I forgot to bring that, yes. That
yeah.
one was received by the council, and that's related to the
realignment
county
and bridge replacement project.
Oh, that's a.
It's dated May
8th. I don't think I saw that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I got it, okay.
You should just send it to us. I don't recall seeing that one.
It was in my bin basket.
It was in, oh, here's just giving, okay.
It's about the place. So we had two.
Great.
Okay.
Okay?
That's also related, yeah, to item 8 on your
Okay.
agenda.
Okay. At this time, oral communication. Communications from the audience.
Chris Payne, 327 Main Street. I just wanted to know clarifications on the city's consent calendar, because that's going to be happening soon here. And it's just a question about administratively how it's handled. If a person has a question about one of the items on consent, can they raise their hand? How is it that they get to you guys? Because you're the ones, based on your agenda, are the only ones that can have an item pulled for comment, or in terms of, am I clear? I'm kind of confused.
You're clear in what I do?
I'm confused just on how the process works.
Right.
From the public side.
Okay.
Okay.
After I ask, and we talk about it, then I ask if there's any comments from the public on a particular item.
Okay, so everybody gets
So then you can come forward with
Okay.
a comment on a particular item.
Do you go each one item by item?
No.
As a group, right? Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Mark Acuna, Placerville. Madam Mayor, before I begin, I was asked, I had intended to come to this evening's City Council meeting to bring a couple of items to the council's attention during this particular time. And then yesterday I was requested by the president of the Hangtown Goldbug Park Development Committee to come and make a presentation that he's unable to make this evening. So I would like to utilize 2 3-minute segments, if I might, with your permission. I'll begin by wearing my Goldbug Park hat, and then I'll become Mr. Southside Citizen after I'm done with my little announcement for Goldbug.
I'll ask City Clerk to give him 2. Oh, Steve's doing the...
Mr. Yule is the timer this evening.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So noted, Mr. Yule. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Goldbug Park Special Memorial Day weekend is planned this coming Memorial Day for the Priest Mine Tours. Hangtown's Goldbug Park Development Committee, in cooperation with Placerville's Park and Recreation Department, is offering special tours of the seldom seen 1850 Priest Mine over the upcoming Memorial Day weekend, all 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, May 23rd through the 25th. We are inviting the public to take a walk into our mining history and visit Goldbug Park over the long weekend. The park held two similar 3-day weekend events last year, and both were tremendously successful with hundreds of people in attendance on both events. This event will again be promoted both locally and with the Sacramento media, and we've also learned to reach out through Facebook and TripAdvisor to add to our attendance numbers. This year, 100% of the funds raised by the special tours of the Priest Mine will be used by the Development Committee to create a new display area in front of the stamp mill. This new display will include large mining tools and equipment, a Pelton wheel, a single stamp mill, and a new historic hydraulic monitor that was recently donated by a local citizen. Information regarding the activities at the park. The park will be open in its normal hours, 10 to 4 each day. Also will be the normal features at the park, the Goldbug Mine Tour. You'll have free entry into the mining museum, stamp mill, blacksmith shop, and the hiking trails, of course. The gift shop will also be open all 3 days, and the gift shop will have some unique handcrafted items that are now a regular part of its inventory from our blacksmith program, which is extremely successful. Each day during the 3-day weekend, the volunteers will provide a continuous 20-minute tour of the Priest Mine. The cost for the tickets to tour the Priest Mine are $4 each, and the committee is asking for cash only, please. The Priest Mine tours will start at 10:15, and the final ticket sale each day will be at 3:15. So because we have to stay on schedule so that we can close the park up at 4 o'clock. So we would like to invite all the members of our public, our neighborhood, and of course our city council members. We're very happy to have you all come out and look forward to seeing you there at some time during the Memorial Day weekend. And we do, of course, always have opportunities for anyone that would like to volunteer. So can I answer any questions for you?
I'd like to ask if you have a do you have a Facebook page, or is this
Yes, we
posted
do.
on the website that somebody, in case somebody's interested?
It's on
they can-
Facebook, and it's also on TripAdvisor. We have our own website, and I believe it's also linked to the city's website.
Is it on the city? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Super.
Anyone else have any questions on this item? Okay, your next item.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. Now I will become Mark Acuna's citizen at large, if you will. Starting out, I'd like to thank the engineering and development departments for the recent completion of the latest in a number of Marshall Hospital parking lot projects on Washington Street. As I looked at that today, it reminded me from my days as the planning commissioner when we did the very first one of those parking lots. And they've successfully constructed parking lots quite a ways south along Washington Street. Recently, the hospital, using the local contractor Gordon Vicini, did a very nice job in developing their new parking lot and, of course, making a substantial improvement to Washington Street. The one thing that has lacked, not only from this project as well as previous projects, is a centerline stripe on that street. We now have a tremendous velocity of cars going to a funnel point, which is currently now at Glory Road, which is where Choke Point at the south end of Washington. So now people are really getting ahead of steam up. No center line, there's no real suggestion there that you are about to hit a street that is very narrow. Brings me this evening is last week when I found it necessary to pull into a driveway to avoid a head-on collision right by Glory Road. So I'm sure it was always our intention to get some striping at the very least along there. So that would be a wonderful addition to completing that. And if we could also look at maybe working with the property owners like Mr. Yule did along Country Club and Airport, maybe clear some of that brush out at Cedar Ravine and Washington Street. There's a tremendous lot of traffic now that's using that. And after a week ago, I've chosen not to go that way anymore. It's just not worth the couple extra minutes. So anyway, if staff or the council could look into that, I would be most appreciative of it. The other item I would like to ask the city council for their assistance on this evening is what we can do to reduce the fire hazard on the number of existing single lot residential and a few remaining commercial lots in town. It seems like it's the same lots every year that don't get cleared. I have had a very hit and miss experience with the fire district and having them follow through. You know, at one time it was probably an issue of aesthetics or maybe my own opinion as a neighbor wanting my lot to be cleaner or whatever. But these weed and brush infested lots are now impacting people's ability to keep and maintain their fire insurance. I have had a number of neighbors in Parkview Estates that have had to have specific mediations done to be able to maintain their fire insurance. And there are currently in that subdivision a number of lots that were added about 10 years ago that have never been cleared, and they are again causing significant problems with insurance. I did a little bit of research and remembered that back in about 2006, the city did establish a fire safe council. And shortly after 2006, the economy tanked and all the funding for the fire safe councils disappeared. And I'm afraid that the fire safe council disappeared with it. And I also did a little check on the website, and the city has a wonderful, very complete ordinance, 8-4-1, that fully outlines all the actions that should be taken to prevent weed accumulation, fire hazards, potential for hearings and appeals and everything. I mean, it's all there. We just need, as a city, to do something. We survived a couple of very serious fires last year. They had a 2-acre brush fire today on Quarry Road. And it just rained a few days ago. So I would appreciate the council looking into this, and I would also offer my assistance to help staff with a number of lots that are in my neighborhood I have received complaints on this year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, honorable gentlemen and ladies, officer, citizens of El Dorado County and Placerville. My name is Aidan McGuire. I've lived in Placerville for about 20 years, and over those 20 years I've seen quite a lot of changes, most all of them I think good. One of the things I've thought about over the years is what we kind of lack in Placerville is a place to relax, a place to be able to sit and people watch, eat an ice cream, eat a sandwich, drink a cup of coffee, look at the local merchants, enjoy the ambience of our fine city, and we don't really have much of that. And a couple of months ago, I was in San Francisco and saw an idea which has been gaining a lot of ground in towns, cities around the US, and I think around Europe, called parklets. I don't know if you've ever heard of that notion. I actually have a couple of pictures here. Can I just pass these around to people to look at?
Give it to our city clerk first, please.
So the idea of a parklet is you take a couple of parking spots and you make a small area, and these areas can be created in all different kinds of ways. They can be done very artistically, they can be done historically, they can be done functionally, they can be even done in a movable way if it's necessary. And you can put plants around there, you can do some artistic representations, you can do some cool seating. And what it does very easily, it creates these small little areas where people just are drawn to congregate and relax and talk and look at the local stores and enjoy the ambience of our fine town and eat a sandwich and so forth. They are relatively inexpensive. They can even be moved if you want them to. You can even add in their bike racks. There's no limits to what you can do. And in fact, artistically, I'd thought that you could even do a great idea where we have such a wealth of great artists in and around El Dorado County. You could even have a competition for someone to help design one of these type of parklets. I think the initial idea of taking 2 parking spaces, I understand, of course, that parking spaces are money in Placerville, but I would argue that the revenue this would bring in, the way it would enhance our city, Because Placerville, what we try to do is we want families to come here. We want people to come here and stop here. We want them to relax, enjoy the ambience, get into their wallets and spend a little money and enjoy the town. And I think something like this would quite easily pay for itself. I think we have a large parking structure that's very close by. We have slow-moving traffic, so that's not really a problem in terms of, people getting hit or anything. So these have been found to be quite successful in a lot of towns as a way of creating small areas of space inexpensively and artistically that can still be very much in the character of historical Placerville. And so I wanted to just sort of bring and share that with you guys tonight after seeing some of these and talking to several friends of mine who said, everybody seems to agree, what a great idea. This is what we need in Placerville.
Okay,
and
I'm
so
going to have to ask you to...
Okay, I guess that's my 3 minutes. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
But thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. Take care.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council. And we will look into all of the things that were discussed tonight and that you brought forward to us. Thank you. Okay, consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. The reading of the full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a council member requests otherwise. Is there anyone who would like to? Okay, I'm seeing Mr. Clarici.
I would like to pull 8.8. The redwood thingy.
The redwood thingy.
Yep.
I would like to actually pull 8.9.
I'll move the consent calendar, pulling 8.8 and 8.9, and there's a small wording correction to 8.5. We have just some mixed up words that we have a correction from the clerk.
Mrs. Zito has presented us with the correction on 8.5. Okay, do I have a motion? Oh, okay, well, I was before the, okay. Public comment. Mr. Payne, this is what you were talking about, so you want to, at this time, you can come forward and comment on, ask a question on on any particular.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was doing it on behalf of somebody who had asked me a question, and that's the reason why I wanted to gather it up. I believe the item that they were interested in has been pulled now, 8.9,
Oh, okay.
if I understand. So we're good. We're good to go.
Good.
Thank you.
Sue Rodman, Placerville. I noticed that on the consent calendar, it says all matters listed on the consent calendar are continued routine. And I think some of these are not really routine and should be discussed. And in particular, 8.9 and 8.11. 8.11 being the wonderful mess at Clay Street that we have been having as discussion items for years, and now all of a sudden it's part of the consent calendar, which I think is inappropriate. And I think also 8.9 has been something people have wanted to discuss before and is not appropriate to be in the consent calendar.
And that's been pulled.
I know that one has been pulled. 8.11 hasn't. 8.8 is another one that I think is a great idea, but I don't think it's actually routine. So I'm wondering if we're getting a little more loose with our consent calendars and putting things into the consent calendar that really aren't routine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council.
Madam Mayor, I would like to pull 8.11.
Okay. Okay, so we pulled 8.8, 8.9, and 8.11.
Oops. I'll amend my motion to move the consent calendar, removing 8.8, 8.9, 8.11, and keeping the correction to 8.5.
I'll second that. Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Okay, at this time, we will begin addressing what we've pulled. Eight point eight is adopt a resolution declaring approximately 4,800 linear feet of reclaimed lumber as surplus property and authorize the release of said lumber to the El Dorado High School Industrial Technical Education Department in exchange for 2 8-foot picnic tables. Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a real exciting project we're real proud of. What we're asking tonight is that Council adopt a resolution declaring approximately 8,400 linear feet of reclaimed lumber as surplus property and authorize the release of that lumber to El Dorado High School Technical Education Department. And we're going to work hand in hand with them to put to good use some of the lumber that was recently removed from an old water tank that was up off of Party Way. And we're really looking forward to working with the students to not only make a few picnic benches, but also with the remaining wood, put that wood back into our community throughout our gardens with help from Community Pride. A few of the larger beams we plan to use to rehang the bell on the monument garden, and then some may remember there was a mine entrance facade in the garden that advertises Goldbug Park, and so we're going to try to use some of the lumber for that also. There is a few other options. There is a value to this lumber that's estimated at about $3,500. Each bench, if you just peruse the internet, you'll see that redwood benches go from up to $4,000 each, and that's without shipping. So there is some value to the wood, so we could continue to leave it up at the corporation yard or sell it at public auction. Those are two other options, but we really feel that this would put that clear redwood back into our community and help preserve the heritage of our community. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
John, you pulled this, so.
Yes, I did. Yes, I actually went up and looked at the wood, and it is impressive. There are some look like there's some 6x12s, probably 15, maybe 20 feet long. I don't know about that, and then a number of other types of wood. Nice looking wood, probably fairly old redwood, probably heartwood. It looks good. I had two questions. One is in the staff report, it says that we would put 2 picnic tables on the new part of the trail. Is that the part like from Bedford out that was just completed, or somewhere else? Because I'm not a worrywart. I don't think that everything attracts badness, but putting some picnic tables on part of that trail might not be a great idea. There are benches out there which are okay, but it could become an issue. That was my first question. So how did it get decided? Was that just something that was kind of added as you could do this or you could do something else?
Our intent was to put them along that. There's some really nice sites along that new portion that are conducive to benches. Fortunately, these are portable ones, so if we did have a problem, they could be moved. And we have plenty of other sites where it'd be conducive to have more picnic tables.
Cool. And the only other thing I was thinking was there's another agenda item a little further down the road here this evening, where we are talking about the things we cannot do with our Main Street project, and some of this wood might be conducive to creating benches for people to sit on that have been removed, and they certainly would be historic because they would be old wood, and they could be made very nicely by our local folks here, the kids in town, which I think would be really cool. So I'm not against, I think it's great to give it to the Industrial Arts Program and have them make something, but it would be kind of interesting maybe to have a process where we all get to maybe talk about that a little bit more. That's all. And as long as we can do that, I'll be happy.
In my discussions with Mr. Gunderson, they're totally into collaboration with the city, and in fact, they're going back to the Recreation and Parks Commission next month to discuss the two tables and future projects. So they're receptive to whatever's in the best interest of the community.
Great. Thank you very much. That answers my questions.
Any other questions or comments on this item?
I just have one comment, and that was this plan I read was for picnic tables, but in thinking this through, wouldn't it be better to just have benches rather than benches with tables? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. And then I really like the idea of perhaps having some of them downtown in light of our budget constraints on that project.
Yes, and in fact, the benches at Lumsden Park are beginning to deteriorate, and we also looked at the potential to replace some of those.
And that was one comment that I was going to make, Steve, is that, you know, wood deteriorates, and I'm just wondering if you have plans for like treating them some way so that maybe they last a little bit longer, because it doesn't take long for them to look shabby. And you put so much work and effort into this, and, it doesn't last very long, or at least the looks of it. So that just it was on my mind. But I want to compliment you and tell you how much in favor I am of this. And when I read it, I just thought, whoa, that was good creative thinking, and thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we will go to 8.9.
Madam Mayor?
Do I want to do each one as we get? Okay, and then vote on each one separately? Okay. All right. At this time, then, I'm going to ask anyone from the public to come forward and comment on this particular item.
Hi again. I just couldn't help but think what a great idea, and also what a fabulous use for that historic old lumber, but to make a historic, fabulous parklet in the city of Placerville. And you could even use the El Dorado High School Industrial Technical School to help design it and build it, and thereby cutting costs using historic lumber. It's like all of the stars are aligning all at once. So, thank you.
Perfect timing. Very cool. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mark Acuna, Goldbug Park Development Committee board member. Very much support Steve's idea to try and replace what we lost during the Caltrans Road project. We had a very nice kind of a mine-opening head frame, and it would take timbering and what have you to replicate that. And because of the environment that it's in, old-growth redwood would absolutely last the longest of almost any kind of material we could have. And this loss of that old entrance and a proper setting for the ore cart has definitely been noticed by all the committee members, and it is on the board's radar also. So we would thank Steve for that effort. Thank you.
Bless you.
Thanks, Mark. Anyone else?
Sue Rodman, Placerville, and I think that Steve's to be commended, and so is the high school for being willing to collaborate on this. And if you want something that lasts, you use this old growth redwood instead of just leaving it laying there in the city yards to become worthless. Get it out and use it for something that will have lasting value. And for a parklet, you couldn't do better than along the El Dorado Trail. There's lots of nice places along the El Dorado Trail you can make a parklet out of. So, and having picnics, benches, and redoing the mine entrance for the Goldbug Park, these would all be much better than having just sit there in a big stack. And if you want something that lasts, use old growth redwood. It'll last. What? If you want something that lasts, use this old growth redwood, because it will last a long time.
Thank you.
Longer than me.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council.
I have a question, Madam Mayor. This is for Mr. Yule. First of all, love this project, love the partnership with the high school on so many levels. It's awesome. Did you initiate that, Steve?
Yes.
That's awesome. I think just well done. That's really exciting. Yeah, let's give him a hand for that. I love to see the city engaging our youth in such a creative way. So my question for you is, do we have to specify what the use is? Do you need the council to do that tonight? Or can we say that we adopt a resolution perhaps in exchange for community benches, picnic tables, and/or community assets that, to be determined?
I think Mr. Driscoll would tell me that we do need to authorize the release of the lumber to the high school.
Okay.
Because it is public property.
Sure.
And then the remainder could be vague, left up to the Recreation and Parks Commission.
So we could give you
as
some
an
more
idea.
creativity.
Right,
toward
or
the
more input.
so we don't have to tie your hands to the outcome.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you. So, therefore, I'd like to, I move that we adopt a resolution declaring approximately 4,800 linear feet of reclaimed lumber as surplus property and authorize the release of said property to the El Dorado High School Industrial Technical Education Department in exchange for benches, picnic tables, and/or community assets to be determined.
Do it, your mic's off.
Sorry.
Tricia seconded. Okay. This is not involving money? Is roll call okay, or do you want to, since it's surplus property? Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we go to 8.9, adopt a resolution of intention to initiate amendments to Title 10, which is a zoning ordinance, and Title 8, Public Ways and Property, to the City Municipal Code to allow and regulate outdoor sidewalk and street dining areas within the public right-of-way. Mr. Rivas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. With a little background, restaurants and cafes located on Main Street have been placing tables and chairs and have installed fence enclosures within the sidewalk area in front of their business establishments for use by their customers. Over the past year, staff has received complaints regarding these encroachments, and staff has also received a number of requests by businesses inquiring about how they can have the ability to place sidewalk dining areas, both fenced and unfenced, within the sidewalk right-of-way. The city currently does not allow for these sidewalk encroachment uses, and the existing ones are operating without the necessary encroachment permits. The City Council may initiate amendments to the Placerville zoning ordinance by resolution of intention or by minute order, and staff is proposing that you adopt a resolution so that staff can go forward with amending the zoning code. But staff would also make all, amendments to City Code Title 8, and that involves sidewalks under Chapter 1 and encroachment into city streets under Chapter 3. It is the opinion of staff that allowing for the ability to encroach onto city sidewalks and potentially the city streets with outdoor dining areas would have a beneficial effect and positive impact on the experience of tourists, visitors, and residents alike. The process to amend the city code would involve staff drafting proposed regulations to be incorporated into the zoning ordinance to allow for the review by the city of any proposed outdoor dining areas within the city sidewalk or street right-of-way under a site plan review process, which is under Title 10, and then amendments proposed for Title 8 would involve the encroachment permits for requirement for encroachment permit, home harmless agreement, and such between the business entity and the city. The draft ordinance would be available for public review and consideration by the Planning Commission at a future notice public hearing, and the Commission would review and make recommendations for consideration by the City Council at a future date. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time. Staff is recommending that you adopt the proposed resolution as worded.
Okay, questions, comments from City Council?
Well, I basically asked to pull this because I feel like this is not a routine request. I mean, maybe changing an amendment or changing the zoning ordinance might be considered routine for staff, but this is, I didn't think it was very routine. same with my other items that I pulled. I think that I know that it'll come back for a public hearing, but I feel like this should have been initiated with a public hearing, personally. I don't know how the other council members feel, but I feel like there needs to be an opportunity for the businesses to speak and residents to speak, and even if whether we're going to go down this path. So that was my intention. It's not whether it's good or bad. I personally think it's a great idea, but I just wanted more of a public, allow for public input rather than just rush it through the consent calendar.
Anyone else? Comments?
I agree with Councilmember Patton.
I kind of had the same feeling until I realized that it is going to go through the process.
Right.
And all those things that you mentioned will be addressed. I mean, then there will be public hearings, et cetera. So that's why I didn't really, that's why I didn't pull it. Mr. Morris, you act like you want to say something.
Well, I just want to comment that, you know, the reason for this process is for you to go into detail and discuss it in a public hearing at the beginning of the stage would mean that we go through and do most of the work that we need to do
later,
we do the resolution of intent anyway. Okay. So it kind of defeats the purpose. This is just, I know you can argue both ways and say, well, I need the information to determine whether or not I want to go forward with it, but we need permission to go forward with it just at a minimal level. So I understand your position, and it kind of can, I think it can kind of go both ways. But the reason we looked at it this way was simply to say, give us the authority to look at it, and then we'll have, you know, as many public hearings as required and more if necessary to thoroughly review and see whether or not this is good or bad. So.
Well, that's the way I was thinking too, is that then you'll have all the facts, ma'am. So. Okay, any other comments from council?
I'd like to add to that is I think, I understand why it could kind of, it passes the giggle test to go on the consent calendar, and I understand that, but I mean, something like this is something a little out of the ordinary. It has to do with one of the more important parts of not that all the parts of the city aren't important, but one of the more interesting and focused on parts of the city. And even if it had been nothing more than just a regular agenda item, we could have said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. There's a process. We could, you know, very briefly talk about the process, and I think that might have been enough to, you know, get everybody, oh, okay, we're going to go off and do this thing. So rather than having it in the consent calendar, I mean, which I understood, but I put a stick.
Which is what we're kind of doing.
Which is kind of what we're doing right now. So yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I will ask if anyone in the audience would like to come forward and comment on this.
Good evening. My name is Ben Butler from Pizza Bene at 423 Main Street, and I am very, very proactive in this matter. I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea to somehow,
I wonder why.
I don't know. I'm just funny that way. I don't know. At any rate, you know, one can argue that, you know, some of the most successful and popular towns about, you know, Sacramento, San Francisco, Palo Alto, Marin County, not to mention European countries and cities that utilize this type of seating arrangement, street, and for dining and beverages and what have you. But I truly believe it would very much have a significant impact, a positive impact toward Placerville, being its value as it is now, and just create another facet or asset to the town to create another draw for tourism, locals, and you know, goes without saying, if and when that does happen, it's obviously going to create more tax base, sales tax base, which creates more revenue for the city, which is something of, I'm sure, of a little bit of interest. So, and I can honestly say, from my personal experience, that I can't remember a day that's gone by where I don't get multiple compliments from the little railing I have from tourists, locals, and I feel more bigger, more gratitude from some of the locals that are much older and thanking me for having that little dining out there. It just, it means a lot to me that to get that from a local that, you know, in their 60s, 70s, that's born and raised here. And so, and personally, I'd love to see it as as code would allow, to allow other establishments to create the same type of atmosphere, because it's, to be redundant, is just a sheer human draw, just to make an analogy, same with fire, water, outdoor seating is just very, very much of a magnetic draw. So hopefully things will move forward, and this will come up again, and hopefully it'll all transpire, and we'll be happy to see it out there. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Anyone else?
Chris Payne, 327 Main Street. Also involved with Placerville Downtown Association, and I'm a civil engineer. So I got all these things rolling through my head. I do appreciate the fact that staff put it on. I think whether it's appropriate to have it as it was or not, we're having some good dialogue, and I think that'll go favorably to getting the word out. But also I would bring up under open forum the notion of parklets as being kind of in the same framework of what we're speaking about here related to these changes. So if community development, you're called what, what is it? No, you're community development services, apologize. But community development services needs to have a broader perspective of now all of these ton of topics. This is a beginning, but there are the other ones we also would want something to come forward favorably in terms of supporting these notions. From the civil engineering side of it, not every sidewalk is the same width. Essentially, you got to be very careful making sure that we don't go against some ordinance related to the ability to pass by or pass through safety aspects, which you'd have in terms of restaurants is having enough space that people can get in and get out easily. Well, the sidewalks are the same way. So I would just bring up the fact that some places may not work, and you got to decide what's appropriate in terms of how much space should be remaining for the sidewalk for people to get by. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and I think all those issues will be addressed in the when this goes back to Planning Commission.
Good evening, Jackie No. Bring on the outdoor dining, bring on the parklets.
Kirk Smith, Placerville. It's a great idea. I guess my concern is just I'd like to see consistency in the future. That encroachment is going to be different. Benjamin's place is great, and it's obviously an asset. That's true. But, we had to get an encroachment permit the other day, and I'll probably have to get another one just to do water meter work. And we had to get a building permit to replace, a light, a window pane. And then during the same period of time, there were 3 other windows done on Main Street that didn't get the permits. And 2 of them were buildings that were, historic windows. So I'd just like to see some consistency. It's like there's a pole sign up on Broadway that was abandoned for, 2 or 3 years. So I'd just like to see consistency in the way these rules are enforced. It would give respect for the city and the ordinances.
Thank you.
Carl Hagan, Placerville. I agree that this probably could have gone in consent because I could read that going into it, and I did consider it routine that we open up and go back. However, the key is going to be going forward that we look at and have a couple of hearings, and I want to also include the possibility of if there's zoning and regulations and use, there's a potential possibility of a plaza on Main Street by the bell tower. Whether it comes to be or not is another issue. But at the same time we're drawing the zoning and requirements for downtown, we should make sure it includes things like the parklet or like the plaza in that area, so that maybe that could be leased by one of the businesses in the area that wants to put an outdoor dining in that's adjacent to the plaza. But making sure that we can do it. I believe several years ago we looked at the possibility of Centro doing an outdoor seating area too. So, I mean, those are the things I think, and it's a good time to take it back to the drawing board and make sure our zoning ordinance is good. The parklets work well. I've seen them in small towns throughout different areas of this state and Idaho also. So, anyway, thank you.
If we just had more room, we could do all these things. Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to council.
I make a motion that we adopt the resolution of intent
I'll
as proposed by staff.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, now we go to 8.11. Adopt a resolution ratifying city staff's cancellation of the consultant services agreement with Quincy Engineering, Inc. for the project authorization and environmental document, PA&ED, phase of the Clay Street realignment and bridge replacement project, which is number 40617, and authorizing city staff to pursue requests for proposals for consulting services to complete the NEPA environmental document and final design, including plans, specifications, and estimates for the Clay Street realignment and bridge replacement project. Who, I don't see a name. Rebecca, would you care to?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Just wanted to cover some of the background information on Clay Street, all of which a lot of us are wildly familiar at this point. Clay Street, the realignment of Clay Street and the Cedar Ravine and Bridge Replacement Project was originally identified in 1974 in the Master Street Plan and Improvement Program. We actually found an old copy laying around in the office, and lo and behold, a lot of the information coincides with what we've been trying to achieve on this project. Back in January of 2006, City Council adopted the Placerville Streetscape Design Development Plan, which included a realignment of Clay Street to opposite Cedar Ravine Road with a roundabout at the intersection of Main Street. The realignment of Clay Street also meant that the existing bridge, deemed functionally obsolete per Caltrans Bridge Inspection Report, would be replaced as part of the project. On February 8th of 2011, Council approved the Clay Street at Main Street Cedar Ravine realignment and the Clay Street Bridge over the Hangtown Creek replacement project. The city was successful in securing HBP Highway Bridge Program funding for the design and replacement of the bridge, and CMAX congestion mitigation and air quality funding for the design and construction of the roundabout at the new configured Main Street, Cedar Ravine Clay Street intersection. On October 22nd of 2013, Council approved a consultant services agreement with PMC authorizing preparation of an EIR, Environmental Impact Report, for the project that included the roundabout as the preferred intersection design alternative. Since then, the citizens of Placerville voiced opposition for a roundabout at this location, and the council did hear them. As a result, the council passed resolution number 8230 on July 8th of 2014, which effectively eliminated the roundabout as an alternative for the Cedar Ravine Main Street Clay Street intersection as portion of the project, and making the project ineligible for the CMAQ funding. Additionally, Measure K was passed on November 4th of 2014 by voters that prohibits roundabouts within the city limits without voter approval. Following the council's resolution to remove the roundabout, EDCTC further then deobligated the CMAQ funding, and as at the regular scheduled meeting on November 6, 2014, by Resolution 1415.10. Currently, the existing Highway Bridge Program funding for Clay Street Bridge remains intact for the project, with an estimated reimbursement of costs up to 88.53% the preliminary engineering, and 100% for the right-of-way acquisition and construction. The local matching funds for the project are from the Regional Surface Transportation Program and traffic impact mitigation fees. As that kind of summarizes the history, we kind of come to more current recent. On January 27th of 2015, City Council directed staff to proceed with the design for the Clay Street realignment and bridge replacement project as a four-way stop control intersection at the Main Street, Cedar Ravine, Clay Street. With this intent to move forward with the project, City requested an amendment from the design consultant. At that time, we we asked Quincy Engineering, who is the consultant at the time, to prepare an amendment that would ultimately provide final design, complete the environmental document process, and allow us to get bid documents to be able to send out to project following public input and completion of the environmental process. As far as upon the review of the amendment, it was reviewed in thorough with the contract, previous amendments that were submitted to date, and in addition to that, the overall fee of the amendment was evaluated as well, and there were some key components of the project that engineering felt were lacking and able to complete the project as needed. But unfortunately, furthermore, the scope that was missing was not then justified by the amount of fee that we received as a quote. So considering the original contract for 30% design and then environmental review, staff felt it was necessary, considering the immense amount of work that has been done to date on this project as far as environmental studies, preliminary design, and everything, it was deemed too high to impact on the impact on the project. And so with that, it was city staff's opinion that it would be necessary to cancel the contract with the consultant. Prior to this, we did sit down with the consultant, we did have a discussion with them on various occasions about the amendment, the contents of the amendment, the scope of work, and the proposed fee, and we did ask them to reevaluate based on our concerns. It came back a whole whopping $4,000 less, and that wasn't really, in our mind, acceptable for what we were trying to get accomplished on the project. So on April 9th, staff sent a notice of cancellation to Quincy Engineering for the Clay Street realignment project. As such, staff is seeking council's ratification of the council contract and is also requesting the authorization to pursue a request for proposals for consulting services to complete the NEPA environmental document and provide final design, plans, specifications, and estimate for the Clay Street realignment project. That summarizes staff's report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Carol, I'll start with you.
Well, again, I just felt like this really wasn't a routine item and wanted to kind of air it out in the public. And one of the things that I thought was missing was actual dollars, like how much was the original budget, how much was the amendment, and are these things that cannot be said out loud because you're going to put it out to bid again? And I'm not really sure. So
I can speak to those, and also I brought Katie with me too, who has been intimately familiar with the contract and the previous amendments. A portion of it, essentially, as far as like the scoping and the fees, when we evaluated the scope, we noticed that there were items that were double scoped and then items that we felt that were important. For example, addressing the culvert that enters at the abutment of the bridge were not adequately addressed. As part of that, we looked at what the current contract value was, and Katie may remember the percentage amount, but the original contract right now, I believe it's like 16% of the cost of construction, which for consulting services is already high. With the amendment, it would have brought the cost of the contract to approximately 36% the cost of construction. They proposed an amendment originally of $644,000. Yep, ballpark $644,000 to, and in their own words, to start over with this project. There is a lot of environmental work that has been completed. We are not in the business of starting over because we have done a lot of work on the job. We collectively as city staff and input from the public as well. Then furthermore, when we requested them to look at the items that we felt were double scoped and also to address items that we felt were not adequately scoped, they did come back with a reduced fee of about $640,000. So it was not a substantial reduction, and a few of the items that we had specifically requested were omitted. And in that regard, it was just enough to where we said we need to look at our options as to finding somebody who could help us get this done.
Thank you. That was good. Thank you. That was very helpful to me because I really didn't know the amounts or anything. And because I was wondering who's going to step in at this date. I mean, I have that concern. I don't know, maybe you don't because you probably do this all the time, but.
I currently do not have that concern. We have a multitude of consultants that are more than willing to jump in
That
and
makes me feel
assist
much
us.
better. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
I chatted about this with somebody, Pierre, I think it was. Anyway, Mr. Rivas, I'm sorry. It seems to me, too, that it's possible that whoever is doing the CEQA analysis could pick up the NEPA side. I understand that the NEPA was connected to the design contract as a sub. It was a sub-consultant to Quincy. And it seems to me that it almost, because, I mean, CEQA and NEPA are fairly, for a project like this, they're fairly similar things. I mean, you're collecting the same kinds of data, you're doing the same kinds of things. In fact, they'll share information probably at some point, potentially. And so it seems to me you could almost just take the bolus of work that's been done and say, and I'm sure those people would be more than happy to pick that up, I would think, unless it actually is intimately tied to the design, which I'm not sure if there's some reason why.
So who are you asking, Mr. Rivas or
No, I was just saying that as a general
Rebecca?
statement. I agree
Okay,
with her.
you
I
c-
think there's all sorts of people who are going to want to come and do this, and I have a sneaking
whoever
feeling
would like to,
doing CEQA
to answer his question, please do so.
I can certainly comment on that. Basically, one of the tasks that the consultant, Quincy Engineering, had to do was the environmental to support the NEPA document that Caltrans was preparing. So Caltrans was the lead agency for NEPA, and basically there was a sub-consultant to Quincy that was Sycamore Environmental, and they were preparing special studies to be used by Caltrans when they do their FONSI, a finding of no significant impact on the environment. And that's a very different environmental document in terms of the involvement and the analysis that has in the preparation of that document versus under CEQA, we're doing an environmental impact report, and the city is the lead agency under CEQA. And so we're doing an environmental impact report because we were so ordered by the court in a lawsuit. We had originally, my understanding, we had a mitigated negative deck, and the court felt that that was inadequate for the project. Therefore, we're doing an environmental impact report. The city then contracted with PMC, so we're under separate contract with PMC to do the CEQA document. So basically, we're just waiting to have the those special environmental studies completed so they can be then turned over to PMC, and they will use those documents in completion on the environmental impact report. So rather than complicate the process even more by doing a contract amendment, which is an option that we could follow, we felt it was just probably better to seek new engineering services. Again, they could then be responsible for completing whatever special studies that Caltrans would require to complete their NEPA document.
That makes lots of sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, Wendy?
I just want to clarify and make sure that all the work that has been done before that we've paid for, we are in possession of, that the new consultants and the new contract that we enter into can build on rather than starting over. Is that correct?
That is correct. We've actually already received all of the documentation on the project, right down to the very last email.
Great.
From Quincy and Sycamore. It is a clause that's located in our contract where we actually, regardless of the contract with the consultant, the city owns the material.
Excellent.
Great.
All right, just wanted to make sure of that. Thank
Yes,
you
ma'am.
so much.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay. Yes, that was going to be, okay, at this time, I'm going to see if anyone from the audience would like to come forth with a question or comment.
Chris Payne, former project manager, design engineer, construction engineer for the County of El Dorado. I appreciate the dialogue between council and staff related to this item, especially about who owns the information. That is a crucial part of it, and I'm very happy with the outcome on that. I would want a little bit clarity on why PMC couldn't do the special studies related to the NEPA process, whether that was decided, maybe you got a bid for something that was a little bit more expensive, but under the circumstances, I believe you still have a contract relationship with PMC in place. So that's my first question. Why not PMC for the special studies for NEPA? The second thing is that typically when you chain them together with a design consultant where they hire a sub, you're going to pay more. Essentially, if you can have a straight relationship with an environmental consultant, you'll probably pay a little less because there's markups from the prime to the subs, and that's typically the case. So you might speak to that second point about the amount of money. The final thing is that I think this helps at least the public know that we're not going back to the beginning. Meaning, I think it was very clear by staff's report to you today, the history, how we got where we are, and I'm very happy for that to be articulated during this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other comments?
I'd also like to, Sue Rodman, Placerville. I'd also like to thank Carol for pulling this, because I agree, this is, well, in fact, that was my comment. This is not a routine thing at all. It's been going on for years. Didn't realize it had been going on that long, but I'm aware of its at least recent history for the last 6 or 8 years. And I think that having good engineering staff who can look at these figures and find out we are getting ripped off and cancel it and then go forward. And I agree also that you're usually better off to do all your environmental work with one group. And NEPA and CEQA are very similar. I myself, for the Forest Service, have done combined documents of NEPA, CEQA together. They require almost exactly the same kind of environmental studies. They require very similar conclusions. In fact, for the NEPA document, NEPA CEQA document that we did for Kirkwood Ski Resort to build a power line all the way along Highway 88 for 28 miles was a NEPA CEQA document, because the state had the special use permits for the highway, but that was on Forest Service land, so it had to be NEPA. It also had to be CEQA. And then it amounted to, your conclusions had 2 different wordings to say the same thing. So you could say the NEPA findings are this, the CEQA findings are this, they are the same, and on you go. But so doing NEPA and CEQA together is not a big deal.
Okay. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask Rebecca or Pierre. I'm not sure who is going to, the answers to both questions, or maybe it's, okay.
To address Mr. Payne's statements, questions in regards to subconsultants, they do in fact cost more. There's usually some sort of oversight, whether it just be in the form of direct hours or a percentage amount on contracts for consultants. That is an accurate statement. And you know, straight contracting with a consultant directly is better. That was another statement that he made. That's not inaccurate, but there is a third option too, and that is when you have the prime, the consultant, also have an in-house environmental group. I did work for a firm that has their own in-house environmental group, and the amount of streamlining between environmental coordination, mitigation efforts, and the design is under one roof. It's seamless. And as such, projects get delivered a lot better in that way. As far as the work that PMC has done, PMC has been, I've been happy with them. I believe we all have been happy with them. And when we issue the RFP, which we are required to do, you can't just go and select a consultant at will with one of these sorts of things. When you issue the RFP, that is certainly something that we would welcome. Proposals from any and all consultants, including PMC. So that option is available as well. Regarding the environmental work, doing combined documents. I have personally worked on NEPA-CEQA combined documents, and it does, you do duplicate a lot of the work as far as studies go, write-ups go, addressing the same kind of public comments, et cetera, and it does make the process streamline a lot easier as well. But these are all options that we will certainly look at when we generate the RFP, where when you generate the RFP, you come up with an initial scope, and anything that you have forgotten, that's where you find the good consultants that do write up a scope and say, you said this, but I think you meant this because this is actually what you need. And if there's something, they're in the thick of it every single day. They do think of things, and that is why, if we had that kind of time to dedicate to it, we obviously would need the consultants, but
Sure.
it's nice to have their help and their input.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've already asked if anyone else, but does that generate anything that anyone else would like to come forward and address? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to bring it back to council.
I move that we adopt a resolution per staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Borelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay, ordinances, none scheduled, public hearings, none scheduled, discussion action items. Adopt a resolution Phase 2 and preferred selection of aesthetic features of the Central Main Street Rehabilitation Project as recommended by city staff, and authorizing city staff to release Phase 2 construction contract documents for public bidding for said project. Who is going to do this? I don't have an...
Yeah, Rebecca will hand that. I'm just
Okay,
trying to see if I
okay,
think we
Rebecca.
have-
Sorry.
I wanted to sit by my other two favorite people over here. I loaded up some documents here that I just kind of wanted to share, and they are included as attachments to the staff report. Specifically, just so we can provide a visual look at the items that were selected as part of the surveys that we generated and sent out to the public.
Susan, you know. Dave can, yeah. Is that on?
Rebecca?
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question on these. When we go through this, the responses that are in, I'm assuming are what you're going to be showing?
Yes, ma'am.
Those are just the responses from the survey. Do they show the alternatives as chosen by the consultant?
The survey did, yes. You're talking about for the pictures?
Hang on. I looked at that too, and I was like, well, but my question is still, these preferred selection is, it's still, these are the survey from the public results.
Correct.
That's all this is, right?
Yes.
So what my question to Rebecca is, as she goes through these, if she could just note this was the preferred alternative from the consultant. That's what I was looking for. I don't know. I don't know if she has the ability to do that.
Let me add, not just from the consultant, but it's from all the public meetings and our discussion on a staff level altogether, what we felt was the preferred alternative going into the surveys, so.
Okay, so this is a combination. This is not just the survey?
Correct. Well, the statistics, the decision to decide what we were recommending as the preferred alternative took a lot more factors into play than just the survey.
Because I understood this was an analysis of the survey. if what you're telling me is no, it's an analysis of the public comments.
This is only analysis of the survey. You're
That's
correct
what
with
this
that.
is.
Yes.
Okay.
What I'm saying is how we determined what the preferred alternative was based on a lot of other input. The preferred that's identified in that report.
In order to prepare the survey, we basically took the comments that we received from public comments, from meetings with property owners and business owners on Main Street, from a collective multitude of sources, and that ultimately was what developed the photos and the preferred alternatives that you see in the survey. We had gone through multiple public meetings, and I can speak to that too in my report, as well as we've gone through multiple public meetings in order to solicit input, and we've gone through multiple avenues as far as, you know, either phone calls and personal meetings and meeting with business owners and property owners on Main Street as well.
I guess my question on that would be, and I should remember what the survey said when you took the survey, but I don't. Was there anything on the survey that said, through all of this discussion and chat and the meetings we had, this one is preferred from all of that? Now you get to vote on that. Or were they just laid out there? You can have this kind of trash can, you can have this kind of trash can, or no trash can, or some other trash can, or tell us what you think about trash cans.
This is
Well, no, I'm asking, was there anything in there that indicated that there was some part of the process, like, people tended to like the green ones more before we got to the survey. What do you think? Or were they just laid out there? You can have a green one or a brown one?
Both, actually. We did have particular questions that that enabled to provide comments, or
Right.
neither or other.
Right,
You know?
yeah.
So there were some questions that did have that.
Okay.
I don't recall exactly if it was all of them, but I do recall myself even
Right.
putting in input.
But
in
the choices of the green or the blue, you know, the green pill or the blue pill, were neutral. There was nothing that said, you know, they just basically said, do you like the green one or the blue one?
And actually, I'll pull up that direct question.
Well, I'm thinking they did show the preferred, but then they gave the alternative,
They
and
did?
then.
Okay, like I said, I remember
to
taking the
say the
survey, I
green
just
and
don't
brown.
remember what was
So
said.
down below it
Okay.
says, additional
Oh,
information, in order to be fully considered, please be brief and specific.
Right.
We enabled an option in a box to receive additional comments.
I guess what I'm
Let me-
asking is, was the word preferred up there when the
Yes.
survey?
Yes.
When you were taking the survey?
Yes.
That one,
Yes.
okay, that's what I was at, that's what I was
Yes.
asking, because I
Let
can't
me-
remember.
Just quickly, let me add to
I
help
couldn't
answer that.
remember that.
Okay.
At the beginning page of the survey, if you look at that, it says, based on community input, including prior surveys and public meetings,
Okay.
that the city has defined a base roadway project, which included these base.
Fantastic, that's what, I'm
these
sorry, I
eight
don't
projects.
remember things
Yeah.
like that. Okay, thank you.
No problem. And with that, I can give a staff report. On February 25th of 2014, the City Council approved the Central Main Street Rehabilitation Project, Capital Improvement Project 41412, to partially repave, overlay, construct bulb outs at mid-block crosswalks, repair failed or depressed non-draining sections of curb and gutter, widen the sidewalk along the west side of Center Street, repair or replace water, sewer, and drainage facilities as needed, and construct a bulb out at Center Street and Stagecoach Alley. On June 10th of 2014, City Council approved a consulting services agreement with REY Engineers for engineering and design and public outreach services for the Central Main Street Rehabilitation Project. On January 13th of 2015, Council gave preliminary approval of funding for the Phase 2 pavement rehabilitation and approval of the Phase 2 conceptual construction budget for said project. On February 24th of 2015, City Council approved a construction contract to Vince Aguirre Construction for the Main Street Rehabilitation Project, Phase 1A, the water line replacement. It was also deemed approved to issue plans out for bidding for Phase 1 as total, which included 1A, which is the water line replacement, and then there's 1B, which is the sewer rehabilitation. Due to the estimate of the sewer rehabilitation project being below the $175,000 threshold as identified by the Public Contract Code, Section 22032, Section B, we are allowed to proceed with informal bidding process on that phase of work. To date, multiple public meetings have been held on the project. There was a meeting in September of 2014, and again on November 5th. of 2014, January 8th of 2015, and March 4th of 2015. So a total of 4 public meetings. In addition to public meetings, an active public meeting survey and 2 online surveys were made available to the public to solicit input on the project and heavily focused on various features of the project, including all the aesthetic features described in staff's report and the proposed hardscape improvements on the project, such as the bulb outs. After receiving public input in those available forums, as well as various meetings throughout the design process with multiple property owners and business owners on Main Street, the project team took that input into consideration with respect to the project budget and developed the base project for the roadway work, and it is described as Phase 2 as we are presenting this evening. In accordance with available funding, staff is recommending that the following items be phased in at a later date and can be done so easily, or be inserted into the project and used as a bid alternate if low bids allow for there to be available funding, but be approved tonight as part of the Phase 2 for the project, such as items as the decorative crosswalks, benches, lighted bollards, decorative infill for the bulb outs at the crosswalks, bronze vendor stall markers for special events, bollard bike racks, trash recycling receptacle, and broadband conduit from Sacramento Street to Bedford Avenue. These items are subject to current project funding and could potentially be easily phased into the project at a later date if sufficient budget is not available at the time of the award of the Phase 2 construction contract. An important thing to note is that to date, the construction costs for Phase 2 at this stage are based on an engineer's estimate. Actual costs will be identified once bids have been received. At the time of council's award of the construction contract, any additional funds required will also be appropriated concurrently. As such, staff recommends approving Phase 2 and preferred selection of the aesthetic features in the Main Street Rehabilitation Project, and as recommended by city staff, and authorizing city staff to release Phase 2 construction contract documents for the public bidding for the said project. At this time, I'll run through the photos of the items that were selected as the preferred alternatives based on the survey analysis for the project for the aesthetic features. Have to bear with me. This was kind of a last minute pulled together. I apologize. So we'll start with the benches. The bench on the left, which is the Victor Stanley C10 model, and it was also identified in staff's report in a table. It was the preferred alternative. We did provide at the public meeting in March, and I believe in January as well, we did provide costs associated with each of these items, and we did look at them for including them in the project. I apologize, I didn't get it uploaded on time. I apologize for that. But that was something that we did take into consideration as well in order to be responsible with what project funding we had available. So I just wanted to show the bench feature, and then the next is, and this, and it's sideways in the PDF, but this is essentially the attachment, the direct attachment 2 and 3 to your staff report. And again, the bike racks was another feature that we requested public input on in the survey. The bike rack on the left is the preferred option, and it is a coded option in this picture, but we requested them to not consider color as far as this question went. It's more of a style selection. And also referring to bollards and lighted bollard styles. The bollard on the left had more of the nostalgic fluted base, which matched better with our street lights, and it does come with a lighted option at the top. They also have an unlighted option if you need it, and it was one of the items that we looked at including. And then for a smaller footprint, we did include an option on the right, which is bollard style number 2, but ultimately bollard style number 1 was successful.
Rebecca, before you go off that, can we note here that in our recommendation we have removed the recommendation for the lighted bollards. However, there are 3 non-lighted bollards, correct, that go on the corner of Sacramento and Main Street that we are still including as part of this, and they would be this style. Non-lighted.
Non-lighted. They are required for safety.
Due to the way the roadway is going to be developed in that area with the ramp that's going to be on the same level, it's necessary to have something to divide that from the street, and therefore there will be 3 bollards at that location that will be part of the initial project. We have to have those. So, but they're not lighted.
pedestrian protection at the at-grade level with the street and the sidewalk. It's for protection of the pedestrian, because the sidewalk and the street level are going to be at the same grade.
At that location.
Is that where the apron is into the parking lot? Is that what you're talking about?
No, actually,
Main
it's on
Street?
the other corner. It would be the southeast corner, next to what is now the Western Wear store.
Uh-huh.
That's where the corner that has created that issue, correct, Jim and Rebecca? Yeah.
Okay.
And it's because of a number of things that came together and being able to create the handicap ramp and everything at that location. That was the best alternative to create that ramp at street level, so that you didn't have to have it coming back up into the sidewalk. And so there's not room, as you know, the road is very narrow there, so there's no room to create a bulb out at that location, and therefore we had to make that work. And so the solution was to make it all one level, so you don't have a ramp, it goes level into the street, but you need to have something to divide the street from the sidewalk. So the bollards
Okay,
were
help
selected.
me out here. Why wouldn't a lighted one be better? If you're doing it for safety reasons.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Well, as far as the lighting goes, there is a nearby street light that does provide adequate intersection lighting. Typically, intersections on Main Street are lit quite a bit better than, just the general run of it. The lighted bollards were proposed at the mid-block crosswalks, and that the reason for that is to draw attention to the pedestrian crossing at a location that is not otherwise something that would be a cue to a driver that there is, in fact, a pedestrian crossing across the street. So the reason why there's not a lighted bollard at that location is because there is adequate lighting currently. It's literally, the bollards are providing more of a physical
So
barrier.
we're not taking a chance of having those like at night, and I know you're saying, that there's light, but like when it's raining or foggy or anything like that, sometimes those things don't show up, and I would hate to have to see us put reflectors or, wrap them in reflectors or something so that, if people were running into them, maybe it's far-fetched, I don't know, but I'm just thinking that, as long as we're doing it, are we thinking far enough ahead of possibilities that could go wrong?
Is there a significant difference in cost between lighted bollards and unlighted bollards?
Yes.
Yes.
Because
you have to run electricity to there. That's an extreme.
Well, so if we, and this was one of my questions, was if we remove the lighted bollards today, then we don't really have an option in a year because we don't have any wire. So could we at least run the wire today? But then that goes back to, are we going to have lighted bollards? I thought we always were because
did too.
because the
well-
lighting, and I'm just going to challenge you here. The lighting. And I was part of the committee that chose those lamps. But the lighting is not that great downtown, and we do need light down low for pedestrians. This is just one place, but I'm assuming we're going to have more bollards elsewhere.
This location, in all of our discussions, never was planned to be lighted bollards. It was only at the mid-block crosswalks where we planned it. I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm going to look at Jim and Rebecca as far as future for the lighted bollards. Are we planning, was that planned for? We can add it in, right? That's probably something we need to take a closer look at.
He has to come up.
You need to come up and talk.
Currently, I think the plan was to eliminate everything associated with the lighted bollards. So that was no conduit, no wiring, no lighted bollards. However, there is an intermediate where you could still propose the conduit now and put the wiring and the lighted bollards in later. After coordination with PG&E, there's a service point planned at the public restroom, and so there's already kind of a plan to put a service point there. So the city would just have to move forward with that plan, and then we would run conduit from that location to the various wherever we would like to put lighted bollards, and then the plan would be to, you could put the wiring and the lighted bollards in later. However, the conduit is, a fair expense in itself. So I hope that. And as far as that corner goes, the plan has always just been for 3 non-lit bollards, but it's not to say that we can't, change that plan. I think those are actually not stop controlled either. So there is, some safety, but I believe it because it's more of a formal intersection than you see with the mid-block crossings. You have less of a safety concern there because
What
you
if-
are anticipating some sort of crossing.
What if you had a vision impaired person there? That's what I was kind of thinking about, especially at night.
No, it's a very good point. I mean, hopefully with upgrading it to the new truncated domes and everything, and having the ADA accessibility and the other aspects that the project's doing, it'll be an improvement. Certainly, it's always very difficult to figure out where you draw that line of how many improvements you make, and inevitably, we probably, there's always more you could do, and you got to figure out where you draw the line with the funding available, I guess, is the best way to look at it. But there's probably crosswalks throughout town that probably have the same challenges. But after doing night work inspection out there for a while, it is pretty well lit. I will say there were several instances that the contractor didn't need any additional lighting to do what they were doing out there. Certainly, there was also noticeably different bulbs in some of the different lights, and I know that helps too. So there's always that option to look at replacing all the bulbs with a consistent bulb that emits more light. So you have that option as well, rather than running new conduit runs for lighted bollards. And it does, I believe, most of our exhibits show the existing streetlights, and almost every bulb out we're proposing is very close to an existing streetlight. So.
Okay, thank you. Carol, does that answer your?
Well, I'm still unhappy that we're not having lighted bollards. I'm just going to
Well,
say that right now. So,
okay,
we can
and-
talk about it later.
Yeah,
But.
okay. Okay, continue, please, Rebecca.
On to the next feature. The next feature was regarding the selected pattern and color palettes. of
Rebecca, could you talk more into the microphone, please?
Yes, ma'am. The next feature was regarding pattern and color palettes of the stamped concrete for the interiors of the bulb outs, as well as for the crosswalks, drawing more attention to the pedestrian access area as well, with another visual feature that does, in fact, break it up. Although we are currently deferring this to either be phased in or included as part of a bid alternate, if the bids come in low enough, it is a feature that we did want to include in the project overall. And the item on the left, the ashlar slate bulb out pattern was ultimately selected, and then the 45-degree ashlar slate pattern was also selected for the crosswalks to kind of match each other. And the next feature that was used another feature that was discussed was the potential style of trash can / recycling receptacles for preference on Main Street. Currently, we only have trash cans available out there. The open top, that as shown in the preferred selection. We have looked at various options that we can do in these trash cans. These receptacles are quite expensive. We do have some existing ones out there that we could rely upon for a while, and it was, when you're looking at the budget and trying to figure out the bottom line, it was, well, let's be smart about this and use what we've got for the time being. So we did the selection of the combined trash can was the preferred option on the survey, but at the moment we are, it's not in the current bid package, but it could be phased in very easily. They're garbage cans.
Can I comment on that quickly?
Yes, sir.
Just to let you know, a couple of things. For these, we receive annually potentially approximately $5,000 from the state for under the beverage container recycling program. We have this last year, we actually received $7,000, which I requested be used for this. In addition, El Dorado Disposal has agreed to contribute an additional $4,000. I think talking to one of you, I mentioned 14. It's actually 11,000 that we have. In addition, I'm hoping, and I've mentioned to them, they're starting the round for next year. They're hoping to get another 5,000. So My plan, though, is not to include this as part of the project, but we will do this as a separate project to install these receptacles. I will add my piece here also that I disagree with the dual cans. We are so lacking of space on the sidewalk. I'd really like to have the council consider it. And you don't need to necessarily make that decision tonight, because we can come back with you when we need to make those purchases. But I really think we should try to find an option which is a singular split can that has both trash and recycling in it, in order to save space on our sidewalks. So just a comment to that piece. And when you make your final recommendation, I'd recommend we don't select that final receptacle.
I would just make a comment to have a dome covering, because
Right.
people put trash right on top of the trash can if you have an open container like that, not to mention the rain collecting, but I would just really push for having a dome.
You know what's kind of entered my mind? I'm going back to that used redwood, of maybe something, you know, we might be able to have like a container with a door on it that just a regular old trash can could be put into and use that, I don't know, you know, redwood, have the kids, the high school class make something like that. I don't know whether that would be feasible or not, but anyway, it just entered my mind. So, okay, Rebecca, sorry.
Not a problem. The next item that we requested input on were tree grates. In working with their consultant, landscape architect, it was deemed kind of a critical item as far as the survival for the proposed trees, and the proposed trees is another feature that we looked at in order to help them get established in their early years prior to being able to go for deep watering as opposed to having them irrigated, but it does in fact protect the root structure at the surface. The tree grate on the right, the interlock and tree grate pattern was the selected preferred choice. And regarding those selected trees, we proposed a multitude of trees, but ultimately based on public input and solicitation and comments that we received at the various meetings, the two trees that essentially rose to the top, no pun intended, were the Armstrong maple and the spring snow crabapple. Those were included in the survey, and the Armstrong maple did win. They are very tall, tall trees, but not excessively full as to be destructive towards building fronts or block unnecessarily signage or anything for advertisement for the businesses on Main. That was one of the reasons why we were heading for that. And another option, another aesthetic feature that we looked at were benches. You know, benches. There are some benches located on Main Street. We have not a uniform look currently with the kind of benches that are out there, but given the fact that we are spatially constrained on Main Street, we did look at the option to basically be in addition to the tree grate as a protection or as a supplement to the tree grate as a protection, we did look at doing the wraparound bench style trees or benches around the trees, and then we looked at two different options, one being a round style, another being a square, and just to solicit public opinion too, is and the round option style one did win. There were options to select neither if they didn't like any of them. And then regarding the color scheme, family of colors for Main Street, currently everything else is a forest green. We did talk with our consultant and our landscape architect consultant as well regarding trying to find a paint color that would match what's out there now. Our green is a little weathered, but still lovely. And so there is options in order to find a paint color that does in fact match. There's several thousands of pages of federal ID paint colors that are quite easy to manufacture and could be matched up with the existing appurtenances out there. And that concludes those items. If council has any questions, any additional questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I know we've been quizzing you all along, but has anybody thought of something else you would care to comment on?
Of course. A couple of questions. How many trees are we proposing? or is the project proposing?
I believe it's 7.
7. And are they mostly in the baller, or in the bulb outs?
Yes, ma'am.
Are they exclusively in the bulb outs?
I believe so, yes.
So, in theory, would we have if we had the benches around the tree and the grate over the roots, would we have a square grate with a round bench?
No, because they showed a,
I'm just asking, because it was a square tree grate and
Oh,
it was
yeah.
a round bench, and it would make me crazy, but, you know.
Me as well.
Just pointing it out.
No, the idea would be actually it could be we would not do both. We would do one or the other, because when you provide the bench, and I'll go back to the picture to kind of illustrate it. You know, in this particular picture,
see,
they
it's
did
got a tree
include both.
grate.
But if you look at how the bench covers over the grate, it actually does provide the root protection that the grate does.
So we would have no tree grate, is what you're saying,
Correct.
if we had a
could
bench?
exchange it with the wraparound bench.
That's a good idea. Okay.
So a double feature.
I do like the tree grates a lot.
The tree grate's better than
I'd rather
But
see
that could be a parklet. Remember Aiden's comment?
Right.
You could have
Yeah,
little
parklets.
tiny
I'm all over
parklets on
that.
all 7 of
But I
those
don't think we're going to
trees.
be planting any trees in the parking stalls, though.
No, but they're going to be in the bulb out.
They'll be in the
Which
bulb
is
out.
and the bulb out is the same grade as the sidewalk, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So in theory,
Yeah, no, you're right.
it's a parklet.
Oh, yes.
And then
yes,
if we
I
had
see.
a lighted bollard bike rack, we could just satisfy everyone.
It is a goal we try to achieve.
So just so this doesn't get forgotten, because it's not anywhere in the plan, but I bet Mark Acuna remembers. There was also the idea to have electricity at the bulb outs so we could have Christmas decorations and the lights and the
right.
trees. So
To
I'm
go
just,
along with
just reminding you that we did need electrical outlets. Actually, I guess I should be
Well,
looking at.
And then,
And also,
then
though, if we.
the
to-
bollards.
Well, you're talking about the electricity, but if we had trees in each one of those, then the electricity would be there to put the little lights.
Right,
on.
right. That was the idea, was there would be
Not
power.
additional trees in the bollards, right? Is
No.
You're
in the
talking
bulb out.
about.
No.
Okay.
Those trees,
Okay.
those bulb outs, that design was always supposed to have electricity.
Electricity.
So that we could put Christmas decorations without having to run extension lines to the stores, which we might have done in the past. But, I only have one other question, if you'll indulge me. And that was, after the survey was done and the results were inputted, did any of the preferred selections change?
There were a couple, actually, that did change. You're talking about from what was a preferred selection to what was actually selected via the survey.
Correct.
The answer is yes.
And which ones were?
And I'd have to go back and look. I believe it was the.
Well, one Cleve just recommended with the double
Yeah.
cans.
That one barely.
Well, that's still a preferred
it was the tree grate.
The tree grates.
The tree grate. The one on the left, the circular one, the Corona tree grate pattern was originally the preferred alternative, and via voting, the interlochen did win.
Well, there you have it. Thank you.
That's the one I voted for.
Yeah.
I would have voted for the round one.
Never mind.
Thank you, Rebecca.
No problem.
It's a great report.
Okay, anyone else?
Okay. All right. Couple of questions. The trees that were the preferred are the Armstrong maple, and I assume that those have a root structure that goes down deep so it won't impede and buckle our sidewalks. I know we've had problems with that in the past, as we have had on Broadway.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Just really wanted to make sure of that. I am leaning. I know the bike racks are not on our list, our hit list to do with this project, but I'd like to throw it out to staff that I would like us, when we revisit that, to come up with maybe a more creative solutions, because the two alternatives look pretty much the same except for color, and I think we can probably do a little better with some creativity. It's not a big deal, so.
I think one of the things that was discussed at one of the community, some of the folks suggested using more of historical, like looking like a post that you used to tie the horses up to
Right.
or something like that.
I think there could be some more creative alternatives as we go forward.
They
but-
do. They kind of do.
And then,
There's like a ring at the top.
and then my
The
next
hitching
question is if we add the broadband conduit later, will we have to tear up the street?
Yes, unfortunately, it is a large cost on the project to include the broadband, but we have not abandoned all hope. City staff is trying to work with the various utility companies around to see if we can encourage them to help fund portions of it. It's to their benefit as well,
It is.
and so we have been actively seeking a meeting with them to make that effort.
And what about maybe through SEDCOR, any small business type programs that support our local businesses? Any kind of options there?
We're looking at all of
I'm
them.
sure you are.
Yeah, it
I'm
hasn't.
sure you are.
Nothing on those lines has surfaced as of yet.
Okay, because
But
I
we
know
are-
that would
we are-
kill us all to tear up our beautiful
for me
street.
as well. It
Yeah,
was an item that was when we looked at the budget, it was a very difficult choice for staff to cut that item because it is important and ultimately. There was many things that were cut in
Yeah.
advance of the broadband being cut.
Yeah, I know. It's
So
really tricky. Is the cost significant to run conduit to the where the lit bollards are planned in the bulb outs? How significant a cost is that?
And maybe Jim can kind of help me with the exact numbers, but I recall the conduit and actually the running of the wire was about 80 to 90% the total cost of just getting the bollards installed.
Really?
The purchase of the actual bollard is not
Right,
bad.
right.
It's the infrastructure, to get
infrastructure.
it there. And that was ultimately what got us because it wasn't just one bid item or two bid items, it was like 4.
Okay.
And so that ultimately is what drove us to omit that. And it was, again, another item that it was not the first to be cut. It was a hard item for us to cut.
So once again, when we revisit that and have the funds available, do we have to tear up the street for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So it can't run along the sidewalk or.
What we're looking at currently doing with our plans is we are looking at doing bid alternates where we do add those in as bid items.
Okay.
And you get your best pricing at bid time. If you add it
Sure.
in by change order, it's worse.
Okay.
And so we are looking at developing on the bid schedule and bid alternatives as part of the plans and specs that do
Great.
include some as many as we can possibly get in there of the features that we are asking for approval as part of the project this evening. Of that is included the stamped concrete, any kind of benches, bollards, and the broadband. Those are all things that we've taken it all out, but we haven't given up hope. And so if we, we're trying to develop the specs in a way that will allow us to get the most bang for our buck on this job as far as selecting other features.
Because I, for one, think that the lit bollards in the crosswalks are really, really important, especially as our main streets. As we get those parklets and those outdoor dining, it's going to be even more of a hub at night, and that is dangerous as people are crossing here and there, and having those lit bollards in the middle of the bulb outs out in the street just really increases pedestrian safety.
Yes, they're certainly helpful. There's some very good examples of that on West Capitol Avenue streetscape in West Sacramento, where lighted bollards at pedestrian crossings are there, and I concur that they do help with the visibility of pedestrians.
Well, and first of all, I think you've done a heck of a job, all of our city staff and REY and Matt Boyer. I think we had tremendous public process and an opportunity for our community to be engaged in this, and I think it's just an excellent example of of a really cooperative process. And I also have to commend our staff on just the excellent completion of Phase 1A. I know you had many challenges that you overcame, and you did a heck of a job. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Did you want to say something, John?
I was going to say what she said about the public process, but she beat me to it. But I'll just reiterate that. I think that in my decades of living in this community, probably the two that have had this kind of participation was, of course, the original, well, I shouldn't say original, it might have been done before, but the streetscaping that was done in the 90s and with the consultant from the Bay Area. Michael Fried, yeah, that guy. And those were very well attended, very well, I mean, that was really good participation, and we got a really solid idea. A lot of good concepts came out of that. And I think this project, too, is very much like that. Plus, I guess this is a good time to do this. I want to give a shout out to REY. I have been downtown, and I've had several merchants and a couple of property owners talk to me about how they've just been great, and their on-site people have been great, and it's been great. So I just want to say, show the greatness of it all.
We're lucky to have them on our project team.
I was going to bring up the broadband thing until Wendy announced, but I really think that we need to do everything possible and not delay this. And I know it's costly, but I tell you, all the meetings that I attend, that I affiliated with Sacramento, SEDCOR, everything, they're all talking about broadband and how badly we need it. And I just think that, and they particularly address the home businesses, et cetera. So I'm looking at it from an economic development process, and I understand the cost, but I think we would be doing a terrible disservice to not do it now and to have to go and dig up the street later on. I mean, that was kind of what was behind why we did the pipes and stuff, so that we wouldn't have to dig up a new road. And I just want us to go to pursue every possible way that we can. And I know that, because I talked to Cleve about this earlier, and I know you are pursuing other avenues of maybe funding, but then when Wendy said something about SEDCOR, I'm thinking, well, they do give small business loans. I mean, small city loans that, even if we have to go that route, I just think it's so important to do it now and not wait. So that's my 2 cents on broadband. Okay. Okay, yeah. I was going to say, do you want anything?
Well, I can just tack on to the broadband thing. We talked about that in Washington, D.C., and with the impact on transportation because of people not impacting the roads because they're working from home and the importance of that. So.
Yeah, it just involves so many aspects of. So, okay, at this time, I'll ask if anyone from the public would care to come forward and comment, questions?
Is it on?
I just.
Okay, now it's on. Susan Rodman, City of Placerville. A couple of comments. I think that if you're going to put bollards in, they need to be lit. I think it's silly to put in ones that are not lit, no matter where they are, no matter how well the street lamps do. Because as you go down the street and you see some are lit, then you don't pay any attention to the ones that aren't. So I think that you need to be consistent. If you're going to put a bollard in, light it. If you're not going to light it, don't bother to put it in. Second is that I think that this part of the project needs to include the Reservoir Street water line that did not get included in this water line because they didn't realize that we had a dead-end water line running behind some of the buildings on Main Street. It needs to be connected, and it needs to be done as part of this project because we don't want to have to tear up to put it in either. And I think if we're putting in electrical stuff, we need to do it now, and we need to do broadband now. And if we have to not put any benches in, and if we have to postpone planting trees, okay, let's postpone those things. But the things that we're going to have to tear up the street for later, let's make sure we get those things done now. So run the electrical cable, run the broadband cable, and leave some of the other things out. We can get by with the garbage cans we've got. We don't really need any fancy bike racks right now. But as long as we are tearing up the street anyway, that's the time to do the electrical work. You can put it in so that when it goes to the bulb outs, you've got a lighted ballard and you've got an electrical outlet for the trees to be lit for Christmas. But to tear up the street later to do it is really short-sighted. And as somebody else already mentioned, one of the reasons that we did the water line and the sewer line before we did the street was so that the street would last long enough to be worth doing. And the same thing is true with the Reservoir Street water line. That nearly needs to be done as a priority first.
Thank you, Sue.
Bill George, speaking now as a city resident. As some of you are aware, I am now a resident of your beautiful city. Yay. And a recipient of your beautiful water and sewer bills, which I just had to comment on that, given my position on the EID board. And as a member of another board, I don't intend to try to boardroom engineer anything that you're doing. But because I am a resident at 3079 Cedar Ravine, I walk downtown almost every day, and I heard about the projects, and of course I usually don't attend a city council meeting unless there's something on there regarding EID. I saw the drawings in the Vindler Real Estate in the old City Hall, and I was really, really impressed. I love what you're doing. I commend the staff and the city council for taking on such an ambitious project. And I just want to, rather than reiterate what the previous speaker said, I agree with everything she said, that if you have to sacrifice some things, sacrifice those things that are easy to do later, not the things that are difficult to do later. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Good evening again, Kirk Smith. I just wanted to commend the staff for the city and the contractors for the scheduling and the other efforts made to minimize the adverse impact on the public. It shows that a lot was learned from the Folsom experience. On the second part of the Folsom experience, getting feedback from the public, I'm not able to share some of the views that you've expressed. It's difficult to believe you spent this much time talking about a survey with 64 respondents in a city of more than 10,000 people. That's not statistically significant, nor is it a random sample. You have done surveys in the past where you send out questionnaires in the water bill to more than 6,000 persons in this town, and you get back a third. That's 2,000 plus people. That has a lot more meaning, even though it's not a random sample. I gave you before just a sample you could do on your own, which, as I said, I went to 10 merchants. I gave them the book of the streetscape, found most had never heard of it, those who had never seen it, and that plan for the thing down there, that turnaround, you knew that that's been hated for 9 years. But I'm just going to give you one example of the frustration that a lot of merchants felt and a lot of property owners felt. Tonight, Carol, you mentioned an important question about lighting. At the first of 4 meetings scheduled for this purpose of finding out what the public thought, I asked about street lighting. Was it adequate? There must have been a half a dozen persons or more who said no. And so at each subsequent meeting, there would be a discussion about balancing the money and figuring how could we do this. Well, at the very least, let's have light fixtures down there. And then finally we get to the 4th meeting, which is to wrap it up for the public. What do we think? And it's not on there. And I have to ask all these questions to find out, well, what happened? Is my memory wrong? Didn't we ask those questions? And it's not until a 5th meeting, which is what it amounted to, called for at the request of property owners and merchants, that we find out what the decision was made by it's been called the design committee, and another time it was the project team. But the decision was made, like you heard tonight, that the lighting is adequate when you're out there. So, okay, that's the standard we're hearing from an engineer. You hold a piece of paper and you can read from it. But what about light meters? What about lumens? I bought a flashlight the other day and I looked at the lumens because that was important to me. Do we have any objective measurement? No. So how meaningful was that? You had merchants leaving tonight because it's like a war of attrition. There were merchants left at the first night because it's a war of attrition. They It was like a focus group.
Kirk?
Not quite what they expected. What, we're running out of time? We have run out of time. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think I've run out of time. Carl Hagan, City of Placerville. I've got to commend the staff and thank you for bringing it forward. Sometimes your results on surveys are much lower because they become more convoluted and more things. So at least it went out to the public. I've got to admit, I saw it and I didn't respond, and I apologize, but I felt it was most important to hear the merchants downtown on this project. My concern with running the conduit for electricity or broadband is the distance that has to come from the power point. Obviously, the bollards that we want lit are at one end of the project. The power meter is at the other end. I think an extension cord from the fire station would be more efficient. But maybe, and I was kind of joking with Mark, that we ought to just put a conduit to each one of the utility poles when they're doing it and run it off of the electricity. And the broadband seems to me, I don't know, but I recently switched over to Comcast at my building on Placerville Drive, and they are putting Comcast broadband, if you will, internet services to a substantial number of businesses on Main Street, and they're coming in through the back side and through the back areas. I don't understand why they couldn't contribute to this along with AT&T. They already have some underground conduits, at least AT&T does. Or run them in electrical boxes, I don't know. But I'm just kidding there. You've got to have a separation between low voltage and high. But we really do need to work at making sure we have the electricity in there. Maybe it means that the entry point is at two ends of the town instead of just 1 meter at one end. We've got a city hall that's close to that end. We're going to be working on Center Street, and that there should be a short way to get to that, at least to get one of the meters over at City Hall for that end of town. So simple, but maybe not.
Thank you, Carl. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mark Acuna, Placerville. Carol, thank you for remembering the Christmas trees. You're absolutely right, the lights and the trees. That was one of our dreams, that would look really cool. I would just like to congratulate staff for the excellent job that they've done. The continuation of this is from many years ago when the original streetscape projects were done. All of that information has been available for a long, long time, and I think we've learned a lot from that, and what's moving forward is growing from that work and successes and failures. So I think that's definitely the direction we want to go. I think it's unfortunate that if it's important enough that you can't stay until 9 o'clock if you really needed to discuss something that was going to affect your business. Regarding the necessity to put the conduit in, having spent 37 years with PG&E, we always felt that conduit was cheap. Of course, we always had massive budgets, so conduit was cheap. However, it really is. And I'm just sitting here listening. I have already come up with 2 designs in which you could probably get some conduit installed. Earlier staff comments mentioning the service point at the city bathroom was a design that I suggested on my last day over there at the yard. So I'm glad to hear that they adopted that. It can be worked out. It's a bunch of 2-inch pipe. It is to have it in the ground and have it clearly marked so that when the funding does become available, it just would not make sense to not get that conduit in the ground. Forget about the wire for right now. Forget about paying PG&E because, yeah, they're expensive and there's electrical work that has to go on. But just get that empty conduit in the ground. Get it, and I know I can still get some cooperation and get a little bit more free engineering over there to get this thing ironed out so that we can get about at least 3 service points for this. It was mentioned by the engineers that they have noticed that there's a variation in a lamp's output downtown. And back when John Driscoll was city manager / city attorney and those lights first went in, there was a tremendous concern about the glare. And John, being the kind of proactive guy that he is, spent a lot of time and energy changing lamp sizes, installing shades and shields, I wouldn't doubt that we probably have about 50% of the actual lumens that we're paying for, based on the rates, because there was we had an adjustment period. We were used to Cobra headlights that were way above our cars, and now we had old style street lights that were in our faces. I think we're beyond the adjustment period now, so I think we might pay to address some of the lighting concerns to the next time the lighting contractor goes through, have him check and see what we're paying for versus what we're getting. And then lastly, regarding broadband, unfortunately, I'm not that familiar with what its conduit requirements are, but Carl touched on it. The creek could be our friend. I mean, I spent the city council career getting the sewer out of the creek. Broadband is a clean conduit that could use the creek. I mean, if worse came to worse, you could use the creek as the expressway to then stub out towards Main Street, wherever you needed to. So if you had broadband, that wouldn't happen. I mean, I'd be happy to put my old engineering hat back on and see what we could come up with. And I think that's I'm very intimately familiar with the way Main Street's wired electrically. There's got to be some ways that the similarities there to stub out for the antennas and the supplies and whatever broadband is going to need, because we have to move forward and we have to have that to function as a modern city in the future. So if I can be any assistance, I would welcome staff to call and see what we could work out.
Thank you, Mark. And you do realize what you've just committed yourself to. In the last 3 minutes, you've got a project for the rest of the year. But we appreciate it, and I'm sure that you'll be getting a phone call. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to bring it back to council. And you, that's fine.
One thing about the electrical, we do have streetlights with electricity. Is it impossible to borrow the electricity, or would we use up all the electrons?
John,
would we use up all the?
That's what the pot growers do.
I guess. Well, but it's our electricity. I mean, we pay for it. I mean, or would we use up all the electrons, and you couldn't do that? No, I mean, really. I mean, there are lights. It's not like we don't have electricity in the street.
It's a question we asked PG&E when we met with them, and because I guess the street lights are being paid on a per unit basis, or and so a flat rate, and so they would require an actual separate service point to be a metered service for the lighted bollards.
Jim, can I ask a question though? What if we agreed to pay a flat rate for each one of the new bollards?
When we showed them the specs on the lighted bollards, they didn't seem interested in doing a flat rate for those. They wanted a metered connection.
They're actually going to be, I'm assuming, less power than what the street light is.
Are you saying?
It should be an advantage to PG&E if we agreed to. Anyway, we can talk about this more.
We'll talk to our consultant, Mr. Acuna, who just who just volunteered his services.
Yeah, I mean, because certainly it would be the cheapest from a conduit perspective. I mean, there's far shorter runs. And are there also electrical outlets at the current street lights, or? Okay. Inside the base, so there are and those will be close to those trees too. I guess we would just have to see as far as, okay.
Thanks.
And then if I may speak
Yes, Rebecca?
on the broadband subject, one option that we'll be looking back at is, along with the existing infrastructure that's in place, AT&T, and there's PG&E and conduits, Mr. Acuna is correct. They do throw additional conduits in the ground, and they don't often use them all up. And what ends up happening is, with specifically with PG&E conduits, is they lease conduits to various other utilities. And so that is an option we are looking at, is can we encourage a lease to support the broadband wiring in existing conduits? Is there availability in the conduits that are currently in the ground, or are they already all in use?
Cool.
And how long is it going to take to find that out?
We are currently working on it.
Okay. And I just want, I'm asking that question because I don't want to approve this tonight with absent the, so I don't know how to approach that with the form of a motion.
you will have another opportunity to address the conduit issue when we award the bid.
Okay,
So I
so,
would request that, we've heard you loud and clear. We will do everything we can. Very minimum, it will be included as an alternate, both for the, what I'm hearing is both for the electrical for the bollards and for the conduit for the broadband.
okay.
So both of those will be included. We'll get bids for them. We'll bring it back, and then we'll let you make the final decision how
Okay.
we do that, how we pay for it. In the meantime, we'll also look at options that might can cut that cost down for the electrical and for the conduit. I still would like to think that perhaps we could get cooperation from perhaps AT&T and or Comcast to perhaps fund that, to get that in the ground. So we'll continue to pursue that, and we won't have an answer by time we go to bid, but we will have an answer by time we award the bid.
I think as long as we're assured that we're, going to pursue it, it'll satisfy me anyway, so, okay.
I have one more question
Okay,
for
Carol.
Rebecca. Was there a decision made on the actual composition of the asphalt?
As far as the specifications of the asphalt that's currently included, there are standard specifications that we look to include in the bid documents. As far as the actual composition, the mixed design, essentially, of the asphalt, there are minor tweaks that we could incorporate. And one of the options is, in fact, the aggregate base that's used. But I do caution that anything that changes from what is a standardized option does increase cost.
Well, I talked to you a long time ago about the pavement that was used from Bedford to Broadway on that section of Main Street and how nice it is. And you said, it was expensive, which
It
doesn't
was
surprise me.
substantially more expensive.
And you're referring to the rubberized
Yeah,
pavement?
it's rubberized. So was that looked at? Was it compared?
Yes, ma'am, it was looked at. It was priced out. It is also substantially more expensive than standardized asphalt. We did look at trying to attempt to secure a grant to help us with the funding of that. And unfortunately, by the time that it was presented as an option, the grant deadline had already passed, and we were unable to secure that funding, unfortunately. We did look at other options. We did some additional research on the state's website for those items, and were unsuccessful at finding another grant.
That's too bad. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
No?
I would like to also, I want to defend the process. I think that it was well done. I think it reached out to a lot of people. One of the things I was very impressed with was the kind of breadth of opinions that came in the door. Everything from the very sort of traditional, preservationist to more other kinds of thinking. And I think it all made for a very good process. What I've found in my life doing this for a living is that when someone's opinions do not gain traction, it's easy to blame the process. It just wasn't done enough. You didn't talk to enough people. Somehow magically people would appear that shouldn't appear, whatever it is. I want to defend this process. I think it was done very well. I think we reached out to a lot of people. We got a lot of good input, and I think we're going to have a very good project when it's all said and done. Thank you.
With that, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we approve the project as recommended, including the preferred selection for aesthetics features, except for the trash receptacles and bike racks.
I second that.
Okay.
So I have a question on your motion.
Okay.
Does that then, and maybe this is more of a question for the city manager, is the ones that the staff is recommending be phased in at a later date, because that's the staff recommendation. So would we want to prioritize the broadband conduit and the lighted bollards in the motion? I know that they said that they heard it,
right.
But right now the staff report says those are going to be phased in at a later date. I didn't want to speak for you. But
No, I agree with that completely.
I don't know.
Would that be helpful?
What I would recommend, include in your motion that those be definitely included as alternates. I think, are we planning on including all of these as alternates, Rebecca?
That is an option we're looking at, yes.
Okay.
But
But
should
we
we
will,
set
if
a
we
price?
include that, to definitely include those two items, the electrical for the lighted bollards and the broadband conduit are, need to be definitely included as alternates for consideration.
So I'd like to amend my motion that we approve the project as recommended, including the preferred selection for aesthetic features except for the trash receptacles and bike racks, but making a priority of the conduit for the lit bollards and the broadband.
And I'll second that. I'll second that. Thanks.
Okay, you've all heard the motion. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay. Thank everyone.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay, council reports from other agency meetings. Transit Authority, Councilmember Wilkins.
We had a meeting on Thursday, but I don't think there was too much that involved the city.
No.
It needs to be reported out.
Thank you. Transportation Commission, Councilmember Thomas.
Yes, just two brief items. An exciting project is that we are embarking on the development of a Western El Dorado County Bicycle Travel Opportunities Map, which will basically highlight the recreational opportunities for bicyclists in El Dorado County. And that's going to be really exciting. And they'll be also looking at online and as well as a physical map to take on the trails to make us just more accessible to recreational users, which is really exciting. And then I want to highlight that on May 18th at the Cameron Park CSD, there will be the El Dorado County Regional Transportation Plan Environmental Impact Report scoping meeting. And what they'll be doing is they'll be asking for input on what should be included, hence the scoping, for the regional transportation plan moving forward. And that will be, once again, May 18th from 4 to 6. And they'll release the draft in July. And in August, the El Dorado County Transportation Commission will, I don't write my notes here, will be open for public comment at that point too. So it's an ongoing process, but starting May 18th at the Cameron Park CSD.
So, Wendy, usually they hold like 5 or 6 meetings. Is
Right.
there anything going to be closer to Placerville?
No, it's not. No,
okay,
it's the
that's.
Cameron Park
I think
CSD.
we need to stipulate
Exactly.
that.
That's a good point.
That is the one public scoping meeting.
That's what I
exactly.
thought. Okay.
So thank you.
Okay. Okay, LAFCO, Councilmember Patton.
There was no meeting.
Okay. SACOG, Councilmember Clarici.
We had a meeting of the Transportation Committee last week, and a lot of just mundane stuff. But one interesting thing is there's the SAFE program, the call box program, you know, those things that, and they were all very vogue in the 90s, and then they were completely eliminated through cell phones. But they do still exist, and there are some that needed because the cell coverage is no good, or they're in places where they, you know, it just doesn't, they work. But what's pertinent to this discussion is El Dorado County is a member of the SAFE, and they are actually looking at having extra money because as they reduce the number of call boxes through efficiencies and other thing, they don't spend as much money. And it was surprised me, El Dorado County was actually a donor county in this process, which we really almost never are. So I thought it was really cool. And there might be some money coming back. Now this would be a bit more important to the county than the city, but there might be some money coming back to the county for transportation stuff. And it was like not a small amount. It was like $1 million. They were like in the black, like $1,200,000. It was a lot of money. I was.
So
it's
what-
$1 on your registration. It's $1 on your registration. That's how they pay for it. So the I don't know how many cars are registered in the city, but potentially we would have access to some of that money. Just saying.
Who's we? Would it go through transportation, or would it come?
Yeah, it might go back through the Transportation Commission.
Okay, and
they were
to be
still
doled out.
They were still working on the details of that, because they were like, and of course the non-donor counties were like going, well, you can't do that. But it was kind of cool. Anyway, so I will, as the details become clearer,
Okay.
I will let you know.
Okay.
Maybe lip bollards are in our future. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I don't see that much money, but you never know.
Okay, and SEDCOR would be me. I did attend a meeting, and SEDCOR has had some. We were having a little bit of problem with funding and stuff, but they've recently had. Things are looking up. I'll put it that way, and possibility of getting more loans and of getting additional funding, so I will keep you abreast of what's going on there. And I will say that last week was just a week filled with really interesting meetings. One of the, again, pleasures and work, but of being on the council and being members of transit and transportation and all the things that are involved. We went to, there were three of us, council member, let's see, the three of us went to Regional Leadership Council, and they made policy decisions that impact the local economy, and it was well attended. It was hosted by the mayor of Citrus Heights, Sue Frost, and it was just, she organized several panels that addressed things that are of interest to all of us. I won't go into each one, but it is, I believe it's online, actually, if somebody wants to look it up. And then I participated in the National Day of Prayer, interdenominational El Dorado County Day of Prayer, sponsored by the Sierra Law Enforcement Chaplaincy and the Placerville Kiwanis Club. And then Friday, John and I attended the Sacramento Valley Division membership meeting, and we, one of the things that they offered, which was, and it was just really, we were very lucky to be able to experience this, was we met at the Sacramento Kings Experience Center, and we toured that center, and then they took us on a tour of the currently ongoing Sacramento Entertainment and Sports Complex. And we went to it was the Turner Construction who's doing the work, and took us on a wonderful tour and showed us, right now they have completed, they call it the bathtub, where they had to put in literally a bathtub to protect for any future. Yeah, it's below the water line, but it was so interesting to hear all of that. And now when I see it shown on TV, I know what they're talking about, and we can watch the progress, and it's, you know, all that much. And then we had a great meeting. We had a presentation by the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, which really gave me some enlightening facts that I, you know, speaking of all this water issue, and the subject was an overview of Southern California water supply, drought management plan, including drought allocations and Northern California water transfer agreements. Of course, he was the advocate for Southern California, but we always hear that they're the real bad guys, and he kind of made it, he made it sound a little bit, it was a little easier to take.
No, well, Roger Patterson used to be the regional director for the Bureau of Reclamation here in Sacramento, and he's a classy guy. I've known him for a long time. Yeah. And yeah, the Met's not the great Satan that everybody wants to make him out to be, and they're dealing with water issues, and they've actually done a lot to secure their own water.
Exactly.
And do a lot of conservation. And the really big thing that came out of that discussion was, we've actually been in a drought for about 9 years, because we only had 1 year in the last 9 that was actually above average. And the other thing is, conservation is not something you just turn on like a light bulb. It is something that is hard, gets baked into your soul after a while, and it's going to take a long time to really get to a place where conservation is something that's really in your DNA.
And I have to give them credit where credit is due. They initiated a lot of programs that we're just now beginning to pursue. And then the other was a presentation by the Sierra Business Council, Steve Friesch, I think you said, and the subject was cap and trade opportunities for rural cities. And and then they had, it was held at the River City Brewing Company, and they had a beer tasting.
I'm sorry.
And dinner, and then the keynote speaker was Assembly Member Kevin McCarty. Yeah, it was a really great meeting. Cleve?
I was just going to ask if either one of you participated in the bocce ball tournament the next day.
No, we didn't. But you know what? If I had really known how to play bocce ball, I would have. There were several people that were. That was an enthusiastic bunch and a great fundraiser.
Yeah,
So-
Italian marbles.
Italian marbles, yeah. Anyway, that was my week. So, okay. Request for future agenda items. Council, any requests? Okay, city manager and staff reports. Okay, upcoming items. Items tentatively as scheduled for the next regularly scheduled city council meeting on May 26th include Measure J report, investment report, dock and agreement park and ride, WPI, PACE programs, police car purchase, Broadway bike lanes, and garbage rate adjustment.
Mayor, can I add
Yes.
to that? Tentatively, but most likely we will also have the marijuana report that you requested on
Okay.
that meeting. So,
Okay.
But not chickens.
no chickens.
The marijuana. I'm going to write that, right?
Yes.
The whole report. Okay.
I told him tonight, yeah.
With that, I will adjourn the meeting to a budget workshop to be held Thursday, May 21st at 5 p.m. at Town Hall. And then after that, we will, the next regular council meeting, which will be held May 26th, 5 p.m. closed session, 6 p.m. regular session. Good night.